All right. Good morning, fight fans, film fans, and fight film fans. My name is Thinker St. James. This is MMA on Film. I am joined by my good friend Chase Parton, and we are very excited to be talking about today the new film, The Furious. Chase, how are you?
Dude, I'm awesome. I am so excited to talk about this movie because, it's not very often that we get to go to the theater and see a new movie, let alone a movie about, mixed martial arts and all that. But this one, we saw this trailer and we knew we had to go see this. So this was great.
Absolutely, yes. So, for you all out there watching, we're going to try to do a little bit of a spoiler free review to start off with. We will let you know when spoilers are going to start. That being said, I guess this is not really much of a spoiler. Maybe I'm trying to, I want to be a little bit
Spoiler
careful
free.
about
All right,
that.
start with the spoiler.
Well, just to say that there might be, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but to say this is not a mixed martial arts film in the sense of what we normally review on the channel, right? I mean, we normally go into mixed martial arts specific films, like films like Warrior that are actually about mixed martial arts, or films that have mixed martial artists in them. This I don't think is necessarily exactly that, correct?
Correct. That is, I mean, it's not a spoiler. I mean, that is something you need to know going into this. I mean, it is not, again, like Thinker just said, nothing about mixed martial arts. I mean, what they are doing, they are doing a lot of mixing of different arts. I mean, it is more uh,
More
the
of
way
like
that
a
it,
more like a standard kung fu film, I would
yes,
think, right? Like,
exactly. Kung Fu movie is more or less the gist of it, but when you're watching it from the perspective of mixed martial arts, this is more a lot of like some pro wrestling stuff going on here, and it's very exaggerated. Like, for instance, you could handstand out of a suplex because that and then backflip out of it. Like that's the type of the what I was kind of saying is like if you are familiar with what a Bollywood film is, that was I've never seen them personally. I think this is kind of what I was imagining a Bollywood film would be like when it came to some of the action portions and what it was trying to portray, rather than, of course, mixed martial arts. I mean, it is like kung fu and some other aspects, some.
well, yeah, I mean, Bollywood might be a slight stretch with the, I mean, more like dancing and that, but as far as like action, perhaps, it certainly reminded me of an old school martial arts film, like what I was like growing up with, like back in the day, there was the Wu Tang collection. Wu Tang Clan would put out like reissues of all of these like 70s, I think even like late 60s martial arts films. And like that's what it kind of reminded me of, but like a modernized version of that. It's almost like if you took the old school martial arts film, like old school kung fu films, and like John Wickified it a little bit, but not without guns. I mean, they're like again, trying to not get into too much spoilers, but not many guns in this film. This is a straight martial arts film, and one of the things that I would say brings it into the territory of why we would be reviewing it is because we saw it in the preview. So this is definitely not a spoiler. There is a cage, and we will talk about why that is there, because it does play a little bit of a part. And so I think that is what qualifies it. That's why I brought it up. I just wanted to, because people be like, "Why are you guys reviewing this movie? It's not a mixed martial arts movie." It's close enough, all right, people. It's close enough, and we wanted to watch this thing, and I think that it will. You'll understand why we did over the course of this.
No, I absolutely agree because, like I said in the beginning, this is something that we saw the trailers for the last movie that we went to the theaters for MMA on film. If whatever the hell that might be
Beast,
at this point. There we go, Beast, and which you need to go check out the review of. By the way, it was day one. Whatever.
of
But
course,
so the trailer, I would love to start there
sure.
because it did a great job of giving you some of the story to make you really want to see it, which we did at the
Mhm.
time. But there was still a lot left for the story outside of the trailer, and I think the trailer catching you is like really good on it, and the movie being able to drive a lot of it home is like that. I mean, I was really impressed with the lack of things that I knew about the movie because oftentimes when you see a trailer, they show you the whole fight. Like when I saw the Supergirl thing, I was like, did they show me the whole goddamn movie? Like Jesus Christ, And it didn't even look that good. But that's another fucking point for another day. This one, the trailer really gave you enough that you wanted to see it. Obviously, we got to see our octagon, which we'll talk about in a second. and then a lot of other small clips. But the movie, it had a lot left. They didn't even show a lot of the villains too, which was a pretty crazy portion. The trailer had like one of them. So
Yeah, no, you make a great point. The trail. This is actually an example of exactly what you said. This is an example of a trailer giving you enough to entice you, but the movie itself delivering a lot more after that. Because there are a lot of set pieces in this film that like are really they're not necessarily like grandiose in scale as far as like the scenery and the dressing and that, but the action is really good, and you don't really see a lot of those in the trailer. So what you do see in the trailer, it like is a good kernel of what you're going to get for those later on, and then there's a lot story wise that also rolls through and keeps you on your toes, really. I mean, there's a lot of twists and turns in this thing. I mean, I'd say that the trailer, the core story of it, because I mean, the overview of the plot, I guess, would be the next thing to talk about, just a little bit. A broad overview. This is, stuff that you would get from the trailer. It's basically a kind of a Taken-esque kind of story, which you get that impression from the trailer. So that's the core of it. But there's a lot more that they expound upon with that within the story, and like it goes farther than you might think the logical conclusion of a story like that would go. So, like I do agree with you entirely. I think that the trailer is a really good like taste of what is to come, but you get a lot more out of the actual film.
I actually really think you were cooking for a second. The scale is not huge. Like there's not a lot of big things going on, but the vibe of the environment, the way that they have the settings feel, I think they really kind of nailed a lot of what you're supposed to feel like is going on here. Like when they're in club scenes, like it sounds like they're in a fucking club, like when they're outside in the rain, it sounds like it's fucking pouring rain, guys. Like, and the atmosphere, the lightning going off in the background, like everything. Obviously, when you're watching this for an untrained eye, for a little bit of it, you're watching and you're like, they're just doing stuff. There's things are just going on. But as you go on and you watch it, and you've watched an entire movie of what you saw in the first 5 minutes that you were like kind of mesmerized with, you start to realize like, geez, they are able to do this to a fucking T. It looks like. I mean, perfection is like the short of it. I mean, maybe it's not even what they were going. Maybe this is the 99th take and they didn't even get it right. But like everything is like so on point with how everything looked and came across. I mean, it was a really good vibe to a movie. I really love this.
Yeah, and going back to the point I had made earlier about it being like a modernized version of the classic kung fu stuff, with the atmosphere and the world building, they still have like some of those classic sound effects at times. Like I was definitely picking up on that. Somebody would like throw a bottle and it would go shing, that kind of thing. Like you'd hear some of that stuff that's like, it's stylized to that style of film, but it really works in a modern setting. Maybe, and I was actually thinking this while I was watching the movie. I was like, maybe I just haven't been as keyed into that type of movie, and there are films of this caliber and type that are happening in the modern era that I'm just not aware of. But like if that is the case, then I think that I've been missing out, because like if this is the level that they have taken that genre to, then this is a really great progression. You know what it reminds me of as well, along that same line of thought, is where they have gone with like Godzilla. Because like Godzilla came from very classic films, and they've modernized it. And from what I understand, I have not seen Godzilla -1, but I've heard that is very, very good. And like, so it's the impression that I get, at least, is if you're taking something that has a basis in a very classic, almost traditional style at this point, because it's been around for so long, and you're advancing it through the eras to where we are now, that's a good thing, and that's a good way to like keep something that is timeless fresh. And if that's what they're doing with these martial arts films, especially this one, I think it was very effectively done here.
Yeah, no, a lot of people were comparing this to things like The Raid, and I'm not familiar with a lot of movies from this region and genre kind of deal. So this was like my first iteration of a kung fu movie. And a lot of things that maybe were new to me that are maybe more known about kung fu movies, and I'll just say it right now. There are superhuman feats that go on throughout this movie, but they start it at the very beginning, and then they never let up on it. So by the end of the movie, you're kind of, it's not necessarily a numb feeling, but that's just how the movie is. So you have normal people who are superhuman like, and then you also have parents in this movie. So parents is a very big thing. That's the toughest of the tough when it comes to this. And I kind of respect the vibe. You know, I kind of like this, and I think it does have a good story element to it because, you know, not to give away too much, like there's there's a mystique to, you know, the character. It's like, who is he? And it's like, well, he's just a parent. He's just a guy. Kind of like that Taken element. It's like he's just a dad who wanted to get his daughter. You know,
Right.
like that's, and I kind of, it's a smaller thing to a bigger story, and it really doesn't even matter that much. But like, parents are the actual superhumans in this story.
Well, yeah, I would extend that a little bit even farther and to say that like relationships are very important to this film. It just in general, and again, when you have a film like this where the core of it is going to be the action and in this case the martial arts and stuff, those surrounding elements like that bolster an actual underlying story really are important to like engaging you in more than just okay, I'm watching a whole lot of action being thrown at me, right? Because if there is any like minor criticism that I do have, just to start off again without going into too much detail, I did think that by the time we got towards the end, they might have gone just slightly too far with the amount of prolonged action that we had gotten, and I'll get to how I mean that, as we get into the spoiler portion of everything. But when you have the underlying elements of like the relationships and which makes it a human story. I mean, that's how you connect on a human level because like you said, with the cartoonishness and the over the topness of the action and, the superhuman elements, it is almost like watching a live action cartoon at times. And like, but you need the emotional core to still bring it back down to earth. That I think they did pretty well in this film.
I actually think that you know, at the end there, you know, I remember I wanted to say this when I was watching. It's like if you, I've never, again, there's a lot of films that I've never seen, but what I get the vibe of, like, if you've ever heard of like a Machete or like the Mike Tyson movies that he's been in, like the Steven Seagal, like the stuff that they would jokingly do in there because like they think it's cool kind of deal. It's like this movie made those cool. Like they did a lot of goofy kind of cartoonish things, you know, the stuff that they would make a sound, a goofy sound effect when they hit them, but like it actually worked, and like they did it, you know, genuinely. Like they really wanted to make that look cool, and like they did. A lot of this stuff, if you did it in any other setting, it would just be like a one-off thing that you would just forget. But they kind of, they do a lot of service to the fans who are paying attention. You know, there's a lot of stuff that if you keep your eye on, you know, they keep it around kind of deal. So I think this is really good, and then the performances, of course. I
Yeah,
think that's
that
another
was
thing.
sure. Yeah, that get into the characters a little bit here and the performances. So again, without going too far, you have it's small in that regard as well. I mean, it's not a huge cast. I mean, there are a lot of side players and stuff like that. But really, you've got your main character that you see in the trailer. You have another somewhat main character that will become very important to the story over the course of it. You have the daughter who is also in the trailer that is kind of the crux of all of what the events that happen are, and then the world that they have to go into because of the events. I mean, so like I would say that based on what the setup of everything is, and one very specific key detail that we cannot say because it is a spoiler right now, but the main character has is very expressive with kind of almost like limitations placed on him intentionally. And I think that it worked really well for this character because it kind of strips away a lot of like the surrounding questions that you might have and just lets you kind of go with him on the journey without bogging it down in a whole lot of unnecessary side filler stuff. Like he's very streamlined character, I guess is how I would put it. The main
No,
character.
I definitely agree with what you're saying there, and yeah, he's definitely really good, really expressive. And the thing that I would say, and I don't know if it's spoiler, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but when I went to go see the movie, they had made me aware that I would be seeing this in a dub. And that is the next thing that I think is crucial to the point that you're talking about with this character is once you learn quickly, I was like, perfect. If this is going to be a dub, I mean, this is the easiest path of a character to follow, you know? So, but then you quickly realize that it is not a dub. That did you get this?
Okay, yeah, this is actually I'm really glad that you brought this up. Yes. So, okay, I'm going to assume that we saw the same version of it. I think that there's only one that made it over to the States, and there might only be one period. But
Yes.
so this is important to note because I don't think it takes you out of it, but it is a little bit jarring at the very beginning. this is, you talk about a sub or a dub. This is both. I mean, like
Yes.
this, like it has subtitles at portions, it has dubbing at portions, and then English dialogue intentionally at times. So it's like it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of all of those things. It felt like, and I mean, it didn't take me out of it so much to be like, man, I can't follow, or I'm not like, this is like breaking the immersion or anything like that. But like, there are times when the dubbing is very noticeable. There are other times where it is, not noticeable at all because the English dialogue is matching with the lips very, like, perfectly. I thought that the subtitling was fine when that was the thing, but you do have to keep your head on a swivel with all of this, because at times you're going to be seeing subtitles at the bottom of the screen. Then you're like, oh, that mouth is not working correctly. And you're kind of, your brain is sort of always darting around. And in a film like this, where everything is very action packed in general, it's really like bang bang bang, you know what I mean? You got to be on your toes.
Yeah, so after a while, I was thinking about like what could be the reason for this? Because yes, you are right. At the beginning, we have subtitles, and I'm cool with it, and we're having a good time. And then some characters speak English, and it's not a dub. I mean, they are actually the actors are speaking the English, and I'm like, okay, so okay, we're getting English in this movie, and then some characters will be dubbed over their voice, and so whatever the case may be, my solution, or what I hypothesized, is that when the movie starts, you find out that it is, again, not a spoiler, this is somewhere in South Asia. That's just where it's at. I would like to believe that, because there's a lot of different stereotypes for characters, and then there's a lot of different ethnicities and regional characters in this, so maybe English is interchangeable and they use a lot of different other languages and mix it in. So because there's one specific character, and we may talk about him later. I mean, he's not really necessarily important, but his lines are all dubbed over, but everybody else around him was speaking English, and I'm like, was he not able to, or did they, whatever the case may be, was there a different idea by the time it got to the cutting room floor? Like, oh, well, let's not sub him over, or let's not do the subtitles because it doesn't necessarily translate to that. Like, whatever the case may be. I don't know.
Yeah, all of those elements of it. I think that pretty much what you're saying kind of tracks with it being, just someplace, somewhere kind of thing.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that it really does follow in the tradition of kung fu films. Like, I think a lot of it comes from budgetary limitations. You have a set number of takes you can do, so things are just going to match up if they match up. If not, we'll fix it in post. It reminds me of Bloodsport, when
Yeah.
everything is dubbed over or whatever. But like, with this, again, that's just a tradition of the genre. So the modernized version of it doing it does not bother me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, just go with it.
No, it actually wasn't even a problem. I was pretty happy meeting halfway in the middle, to be fair. Like, because when I realized it was going to be a dub, I was like, damn, I really kind of wanted to watch it in
Yeah,
their
when
language.
I saw you post that, we had posted about it in the Discord, and I specifically like didn't want to say anything about that, because I knew that I assumed at least that this was going to be the same version
Yeah.
of the film. So I was like, let him just experience it without any kind of anything going into it.
Yeah, so it was definitely good. I really appreciated that it was kind of, again, once you get into the flow of the movie, you stop noticing a lot of things, and then you're able to really have a good time. And
Right.
and then and the next point that I want to make is, and then this is again to the spoiler free territory. Supposedly there was tweets going around, and obviously this happens with fucking movies. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes before it dropped or whatever by the critics or something. I hate to break it to you guys, 100% of people are not going to like this. But the 70%, 80% that will, you probably are going to love it, because this movie's pretty fucking sick. So,
Yeah, yeah, I always take the Rotten Tomatoes and any of those kinds of things with a grain of salt. That being said, I think that you nailed it. I think that if you allow yourself to have the ride with this film, it is certainly a worthwhile ride to be on. Going back to the characters, I did want to highlight the daughter, because being such a central character to this story, this is not we talk about how it's a little bit like a Taken kind of story. I saw Taken. I don't remember it 100%, but I don't recall the Taken daughter in that film being as important to the story as this daughter is to this one. I mean, as far as like the amount of involvement to like the on-screen time,
Mhm.
dialogue and all that kind of stuff, I thought that the daughter was actually a really good a good actor and a good addition to this overall world, like because she has agency in this film. Like, she is a driving force at parts of the story. Like, she's not just a helpless I mean, she is helpless to an extent. She's a young child, but like in the capacity that she has within this story, she does have her own decision making, and and choices that are important to how everything plays out. She tries to take control when she can, and that type of role demands an actor that can portray that effectively. And as a child actor, I thought that this young lady did very well.
No, you're actually you're cooking because, um, she did really good. I'll just say that, because I don't want to get into anything spoiler related. But she did really good, and this is something that you'll realize. I've seen not a lot, but the movies that I have seen from this region, the child actors really do be bringing it. I don't know how they get them to do that shit, but they bring it out of them. And this was a good performance, not just from her. I mean, there was a lot of other child actors in this. Questionable storyline about children. I don't know why this is like a common storyline. We'll talk about it, of course. Talking into the movie a little bit, but like the child actors, great job. I don't know why it's a very common storyline for them to always just be getting kidnapped and stuff like
It's
that.
because it's,
But
it's compelling. It's
yeah,
because it's compelling, and it's an easy, again, going back to that human core part of it. Like, it's an easy thing. We all, as human beings, we recognize a parent's love for their child, and going through hell, doing whatever it takes to make sure your child's safe and all that kind of stuff. So again, if you strip it down to brass tacks, like, it is not a overly complicated story in that way. But as I have said, I thought this while watching the movie. I was like, not, I think I even said this during Bloodsport. Like, it doesn't have to be a crazy complex narrative to be satisfying, and I think that this certainly falls into that category. I thought that, again, a lot of the relying on the characters to carry a simple story is very important. They're going to be doing all the legwork. I thought that was done pretty effectively in this film. I wanted to, going back again to the characters, I thought that the villain actors were very entertaining in this film. Like, because there's not like, well, again, without going into too much spoilers, there's a couple of maybe central villains, but like there's it's broader than that. There's like a couple that are like the mains, there are like the secondary, and then there's like the surrounding thereafter. And the main villains I thought were pretty good. Well, one better than another. There's one that's a little bit more cartoonish, and I thought he was very fun. And then one that's a little bit more subdued. And we'll go into all the details with that. But overall, I thought that they were serviceable for this type of story, and were a good contrast to the more subdued and driven main character and surrounding.
no, I actually agree. I was going to bring that up as well. This is your typical, like your Sinister Six type of deal. Like you said, John Wick earlier, like the John Wickified. But that's just the John Wick storyline right there. You have the assassins chasing the assassin, and then there's the big boss who hired the assassin, but he's not the boss because the other boss is now the boss. Like, it's not that crazy of a concept, but they do it just as good as what you've seen before. So like, I think knowing that if you've liked John Wick, and you kind of, and even if you still love that type of style, or if you've been burnt out and want something a little fresher than what you've seen, but you kind of want something similar, I think both sides of that spectrum, you can find great things in this film. Like, this is it's a really fun movie, guys. Like, it's again, it's cartoonish, but it is so serious. And then by the time that you realize that what you've seen is so cartoonish, like, you're in the movie. Like, this is just how the movie is. Like, people can run 5 miles in flip flops. Like, that's just the movie. You have to just accept it. I don't know. So it's fun. I love it.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to the modernization of the genre that we were talking about, like, all like the elements are all there. It's competently directed, I would say. All of like the actual nuts and bolts of the filmmaking are fine. Aside from what we were talking about with the dubbing, if that's going to be something that bothers you, then fair enough. But like, if again, if you turn your brain off to that part of it, all, it looks good. I thought that, all of the set design and dressing were good. Like, all, the production aspects of this film certainly allow you to be immersed in it. And then, on top of that, the story like progresses in a way that it feels satisfying, like throughout the course of it. It kind of has an odd pacing to it. And we'll talk about this in the spoilers for sure, as far as like the beats that you think would be like the beginning, middle, and end. I don't think it like necessarily follows that 100%, because it sort of goes a little bit farther than where you think a
Yeah.
logical conclusion might be. But keep going, is all I say. Just like, okay, if like once you recognize that that's not where you think the ending should be, just keep going with it, and there's more to be had.
I actually, and I think this is spoiler free, and I think this is good because I agree with what you're saying, but I really liked that aspect of it because by the time we get to the where it's like, oh, okay, he did it, it's over, and then you look at your phone and you're like, well, we got like an hour left. It's like we got some unfinished business. Okay, cool. We got more to go. Like I was really hyped when I realized, like, damn, that kind of came quick. But wait a minute, we got unfinished stuff to go through.
and
So
when we get into spoilers, I'll explain all of this. But I also agreed, because like I was like, man, if they're wrapping this up right now, this is a nice little compact film. But then I was like, okay, we got a lot more, obviously. The issue that I had was how they utilized the more, and I think that that's one of the only things that I personally had a little bit of, if there are any negatives to draw from it, that's where I would say that the pacing maybe played a little bit of a part in it, because if you're going to have that more at the end, you got to utilize it as effectively as the stuff that got you to it. And again, the pacing would be really one of my only notes that is like a major a drawback. Like, and it's not, and maybe I'm making too much of it. Don't make you think that I'm saying that like don't see it because of this. Certainly, it's not that. But if I did have any criticisms, that would probably be where they would lie.
and Thinker has an opinion. If you're out there listening, I enjoyed the pacing. Take his opinion for what it is. If you enjoy it, mine is that it was pretty. I like this, man.
Yeah, well, and we're going to get into spoilers and explain all of why that
Yeah.
we feel the way that we feel here, which I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we should be talking about pre-spoilers at this point, beside that we haven't already gone over. Is there any other stuff that is jumping out to you that we need to talk about?
Um, I don't think so. I
Oh,
think
well,
the
I mean,
la-
I mean, overarching, just as a
yeah.
spoiler-free version of it. How about the action scenes? I mean, like the actual fighting. I mean, like, what'd you think?
Well, this goes back to the superhuman nature. I mean, the fight scenes themselves, I would say, are once you wrap your head around not being able to understand what you're seeing, this is like a repeated views type of thing. If you're really into the action and you really want to see like what's going on here, you got to lock in. But you'll get the gist while you're watching it, but it's hard to wrap your head like that wouldn't actually happen. Like, so there's a lot of thinking that you would have to do if you're really locked into the martial arts aspect. But if you just take it as a cloud of dust and and I'm fine by it. Like there's a lot of cool moves that they do. There's one specific one that we'll talk about later. But don't don't go into this thinking you're gonna see a bunch of Imanari roles. Like, you are, but they're not done the way that you would think that they're going to be done. It's very performative, very very performative.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we started the whole review with. Like, you have to we're doing it on an MMA channel. This is not an MMA film in that sense. I mean, this is not trying to go for realism in any way, shape, or form. This is as much kung fu. It almost like reminds me a little bit at times of like The Wire kung fu, where they're like really flying all over the place. They don't do that, but like it's that level of fantasy, I would say, at certain points. Just go with it. I mean, really, like like immerse yourself in it and know that that's what it is. And I thought it was great. I mean, like, I thought there were a lot of really cool things that they pulled off. And I think it's almost intentional that it's that
Yes.
fantasy element of it. Of course, you're trying to go for things that you could not do in reality. And I think that they do all of that very well. There's a lot of usage of cool, like non-combat items that they
Yes.
use in fighting capacities, which is very, very cool as well. And because of the environments that they are in, those play a different part depending on where they are. So I thought that was all very well done. These performers, man, going back to just the level of talent that has to go into a film like this. the choreography. Shout out to the fight choreography and these fight performers, these stunt performers, to be able to do all of these things and make it look not convincing in a sense of you believe it, but convincing in like this works and is real to this world. It's just amazing what they're able to do.
No, it absolutely is. This goes back to what I was saying about them being able to do everything to a T and
Right.
perfection, whether it's in their eyes perfection. From what I'm seeing, they had done, and this is no exaggeration because this is just how much of there's just so much going on that they did more or less probably 1,000 to 1,500 martial art techniques, in the movie itself, and they were able to make 500 of them look like they were planned, and thrown with something, in every one of the scenes that you could see, there was just 5 people to 17 people doing martial arts in one room, and not one person being off cue where the director has to say, cut, god damn it, dude, like get on your they're all locked the fuck in. Like
Yeah.
that's just how crazy it is.
Yeah, and it really does. Like you need that level to make it all as satisfying as it ultimately is, and that is a big reason why this is such a satisfying experience. I would say, and then again, you pair that with the emotional core of the story, which I think is pretty well throughout. It's well presented throughout all of this. Obviously, what we had said, it's naturally compelling, so you don't have to go too far with it to make it compelling, but you have that plus these other elements that we're talking about with the action, all presented by very competent performers and a very competent film crew. That's a satisfying product right there. So really, I mean, I would say that is where I would end the spoiler free version of it, is like, all of those things that we just said coalesce into a very satisfying final product that is very much worth your viewing.
No, I actually agree. I would tell you guys right now, my last thing to say before we get into spoilers, go see it in theaters, because if you are at home watching this on streaming 8 months from now, I would say you may be turned off in the first 5 to 7 minutes. If you've never really seen anything like this, you potentially could be like, this isn't for me. But if you go to the theater and you pay your ticket admission, and you go in here and you don't walk out because you paid fucking money for it, you will have a good time by the time this is over. This is a really good film. I really think it is a fun experience. There's, when it comes to the dubbing aspect, if you guys are a little turned off thinking like, there's a lot going, I was worried that I was going to be, mad watching people's mouths move that didn't fucking add up. It's not a problem at all. There's literally two characters that can't get it, but everybody else, you understand, or you have the subtitles right there. So I think this is such a good experience. Go enjoy it in the theater because the sound design is pretty fucking cool. There is some sick moments we're going to talk about, of course, where the sound design really just like hones in, and they hammer home a really cool scene just by the crescendo, everything coming together. It's awesome. I love this movie.
Yeah, and I think that based on how you're describing that, Chase, if there might be a slight generational aspect to it, because having grown up on classic martial arts films, like I think that those elements that you described would not have like turned me off immediately. But I say see it in theaters for that reason, for sure, because you will get immersed in it, and also see it in theaters just to show Hollywood and the film industry that you want films like this, just something different than your Marvel movies and all that kind of stuff as well. Like send a message with your viewership, because like you said, I think the film is getting pretty decent reviews. It's apparently people are enjoying it right now already. You get more of it if you support it. So I think that this is a film that it's very rare that in the modern era that I feel this compelled to say, like, show that you like a film like this. If you do like it, you know what I mean? Like, show, if it's something that seems interesting to you, support it, because we need that now to send that message. And this is, if there was ever a film that would be good for that to have the case with, like, if like a film that you should be supporting in that way, I would say this is it.
No, 100%. Think about the last time that you saw a commercial for a movie and you said, damn, I want to go see that movie. And then you went to the theater and you saw that movie, and that movie actually was good. Think about the last time that all of those happened in that order, It's normally not all three. I'm just saying.
That's the much more eloquent way of saying what I was trying to say. So thank you, Chase.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So I mean, that being said, then I think that this is going to be your spoiler warning because we need to get into the spoilers now. There's so much that we can be talking about here, and we're going to do just that. So if you are planning on seeing the film, this is where you will end your watching. We'll see you on the other side of it. Come back and watch the spoiler version when you've seen it. But if you are sticking around, this is where spoilers start. So spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this thing starts off. So, let me say it like this: for the first half of this movie, I was like, this might be one of the best movies that I've seen in like the modern era. The first half of this movie, I was so fucking locked in because, like you said, it starts bang, starts with action off rip, and it keeps like, I mean, like it slows down just a little bit to give you a little exposition of the characters, but then it goes right back to action. And those early set pieces, like the two that stick out to me are the very intro one with the lady martial artist, who it's so unfortunate that she ends up meeting the fate that she does, because I thought she was excellent in what she was doing. But you have that early one there, which I thought was excellent. And then of course the chase scene where he's chasing after the truck. These are two tremendously great action sequences.
Well, so let's start with the female. Yes. So the
Yes.
movie starts with her, and this is where you kind of get the ominous, story that we have here. She's running through and she's looking for a kid. We don't know who the kid is. You presume it's just a kid, maybe it's her, blah 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 blah. And now this is where the first interesting thing I wanted to bring up to you is: did you see what was happening in the room when she
Oh yeah.
saved the kid?
Well,
Okay.
so that yeah. So basically, I mean, there's some nefarious things going on. Yeah, they're really setting you up early to realize that, like, this is not, these kids getting taken is a very bad thing. And so we find out early through some exposition that she's a reporter. She's trying to uncover what's going on with these various kidnappings that are happening. And yeah, there's some very disgusting underworld things happening with these children. You can let your mind fill in the blank on that one, I would hope.
Yeah, correct. So we run past, we save the kid. We save the kid and we're running through, and she's telling him to run off and go. And then this is where I would say, if you are not familiar, or if you are not, willing to sit through something that you don't necessarily believe you're going to love, this is probably where a lot of people would not be interested. And I get that, because there was a lot going on in this initial first fight scene. Like, she took on 7 people and was winning, and and it's like, okay, what type of movie is this? From what I normally watch, this is, she's either going to do it very easily or she's going to not do it at all, and for her to like have a struggle with all these people, and she's actually combating them, it's a lot to buy into initially. But then obviously once we get to the chase scene and you realize, like, okay, this is a standard for this universe, I think you're able to buy in quickly after that portion. But this initial scene with her beating up the 7 people, it was fun, but it was a lot of me. I had to believe in what I was seeing. Like, okay, this is the type of action that we're gonna have.
Yeah, and I think that that you benefit from seeing the trailer in that regard. It's like, if if you see the trailer, you should pretty well know that that's the level of action you're going to be getting. So like, you just go with it from rip. But like, if you didn't see the trailer and that is the first thing, then yeah, maybe I could see where you're coming from with that a little bit. But the action from the trailer does kind of start off immediately with that, not the actual scenes, but the type of action. And I was fine with that. I mean, really, what I noticed about that, and a note that I had for some of the fighting in general that was really sticking out to me, was how well they moved on the ground. This is something that was like, I'm sure I've seen it in other films and maybe not picked up on it as much, but like, there was a move that she pulled off where she just like kind of slithered on the ground and like kicked
She
off
did the ray gun.
Yeah, she pulled the ray gun off in a way that ray gun could not.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean, like, the ground fighting element of it was very entertaining to me and very impressive. And then you pair that with all the rest of the stuff. So I mean, like, yeah, it started off with a pretty solid bang of an action sequence, I thought. And then we progressed thereafter. But yeah, I thought it was a great way to start it. It really it brought you right in. You don't have to wait too long to get exactly what you're hoping to get out of the film.
And obviously, so she beats these guys and she's running down a corridor, and then we see the kid that she had escaped, and he meets a fate of a bow and arrow, which you will find later in the film to be a more prevalent thing. But as of right now, just know that there's a guy with a bow and freaking arrow out there, and he just shoots kids in the face like that. So they're setting it up that it's a brutal life out here for a 12-year-old.
Oh
You're
yeah,
either going to get whatevered, or you're gonna get shot in the face with an arrow. And then if you ask
right.
questions about it, if you are anybody to ask questions about it, even a reporter, you get a fucking arrow to the face too, is what it looks like.
Well, yeah, I mean that's definitely an important note. I mean, I couldn't really talk about it in the spoiler free, but it might have been like good to mention in somewhere in there. Just like this film definitely goes pretty far with some of the
Yeah.
stuff that happens in it. I mean, like you don't expect a completely pleasant experience with all of this.
But with that being said though, it's relatively like it's not gore porn kind of deal. Like it's kind of tame in that regard. Like there's not like just open gashes, like
Well,
you're not
that's
seeing
what
the
makes that's what
craziest stuff.
yeah, and that's what elevates the times when like the really crazy things happen because there's like two that are like that way. I'd say that the kid in the beginning and then the wife at the end, are like the two scenes where like because when I saw the film in a theater that was actually really well attended, there were a lot of
Mhm.
people in the theater for me, and when the wife gets it at the end, there was like an audible gasp, like the entire theater was like, "Oh my gosh!" It was like, yeah, I mean, you can understand it, but that's why is because you have the standard kung fu. There's a little bit of blood, but nothing like over the top. Yeah, it's not like buckets of blood or anything like that. So when you do have something that's heightened like that, it is an emotional element.
No, and I'm gonna be honest, and I said it's a little tame for what it is, but and you're talking about the story, it's a little dark, but it does it right, man. I tell you, by the time, like we were talking about the roller coaster that it was on, by the time it got to the point where you realize there's more to come, it's like, oh yeah, I'm ready for him to go get those motherfuckers. Like, god
Oh,
damn
for
it,
sure.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
So it was
absolutely.
cool.
Yeah, so moving forward from that, we get introduced to our main character, and this is couldn't say it during the spoilers, but say it here. Our main character in this film is a mute. He does not speak, which is a big part of the of how this all plays out because you need the expressiveness. If you're not going to have dialogue from the main character, your dialogue is coming from secondary characters and through nonverbal. Your expressiveness is its own version of a dialogue for this character, and I thought that he was really great with that. I mean, facial expressions on point, the action that he portrayed to make us still feel connected to him was really good. But you do have to be aware of that you're not getting any dialogue from our protagonist.
And well, specifically to that point, and they said this a lot, and this is the only person, well, there are two people that have been regionized, I guess, or regionally categorized. He is the Chinese mute, by the way.
True.
They are from China. So him and his daughter, they are from China. She wants to go back, and she wants him to come with her. And he can only just look at her and kind of give her the look, like, what do you want me? I got to work, kind of deal. And this is actually a good question. So he uses sign language to communicate for most of it, and or he
Yeah.
claps or snaps, that way.
Right.
It was kind of funny after a while. It's like, oh, it's kind of cute. But is he using American Sign Language, ASL? Like, do we
I
know
have
what
no
this?
idea. Yeah, no,
Okay,
I don't know if it was if it was actual legitimate sign language or if it was,
just them code,
yeah,
their code kind
exactly.
of deal.
Yeah,
Mm.
I really don't know the answer to that, but it's minimal. It's really only times where he needs like actual like plot moving elements where they go with the sign language for place of dialogue. And I think that worked fine. I don't think that there was anything that really like took you out of it with that. So
There's also times where he does write in English, but then he also writes in Chinese, Mandarin, whatever. So
yeah,
he's very multifaceted. He knows what's going on.
sure.
There's multiple ways for him to communicate, and he does a lot of them. He just does not speak, which doesn't, like I said at the beginning with the sub and dub. Once you find out that your main character doesn't speak, it's like, oh, okay, shit. I'm supposed to follow him blindly, kind of deal. I'm supposed to just follow the story as it is, and if it's a good story, I should be able to follow without having much told to me or him telling much onto it. So I thought they did a great job, me being able to follow the character, and not necessarily have to rely on a language barrier or anything like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also it allows for the surrounding characters to elevate the story themselves. That's again why I brought up the daughter at the beginning. I thought her expressiveness early on was very important. The scene, so as we progress here, the father's like a handyman, and he's got the daughter. She's on, I guess, on vacation or spring break or something, in this place that he lives. Wants him to come back to China, doesn't know why he can't, whatever. And so like she's going to be going home, but they end up having an argument at one point, and she gets mad at him because she for various reasons, whatever, she's angry at her father. She kind of runs off or whatever, and like that element of things like is the catalyst for the entire story. So if you could have done it with dialogue for him for sure, but without him speaking, it really just allowed her to carry all of that. You know what I mean? Like she's the full driving force behind everything that's going to come in the story later on. And I thought that worked fine because it really gave her the front and center aspect of it, and made it also kind of a focal point as to why, beyond just being the daughter, that she is so important to the story.
I think this portion right before we get to this initial chase that you see in the trailer, of course, we'll talk about this portion, but it is actually a really good scene set up, I think, because for they have to establish how to get the daughter away from the dad. So they're getting haircuts or whatever, and the dad wants to get the daughter's haircut shorter, because she's good at kung fu with short hair, and she's like, I don't fucking like kung fu, dad. I only do it when we do it together, kind of deal. And he's like, well, I want you to be able to protect yourself, blah, 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 blah. So she gets upset and she runs off. And I thought this was a good idea that, he could go after her, but, the women in the, like, no, 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 no. Like, we'll go calm her down, you step, blah, 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 blah. They take the initiative to not have the dad try to, make it worse or anything. Like, I kind of, I like the endearing fact there. I missed the point that before she ran out, she said, "You don't even love me," which was like, a damn. She really did it, man. And then she runs off, and then we get where again. This is where you're talking about the young female character. She's not just somebody to do things for the story. She does things for herself. So a kid runs along and he's got like a limp and he needs help. That he's been in a car crash. His sister needs help, and he needs her to come help. So he starts wandering with her down the block or whatever, about 2 blocks away or whatever. And is there anything else that you want to add there before I go on?
No, the only thing that I had was that when they said, cut your hair short, it'll help you do kung fu better. I was like, Chase Parton appreciates this. Short hair for champions.
Dude, I'm telling you, it is scientifically proven. The Furious, all I'm saying, I love the movie. The movie might love me back, but
sure.
yes,
But no, yeah. So this kid is basically is luring her into a trap. She does not realize this at the time, of course. But the kid is working on behalf of who we find out is his father, is part of this criminal enterprise, and lures her down into an alley. And this is where the initial taken element of things happens. She gets a bag put over her head and she's tossed into the back of a truck like a bag of garbage, really. I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely. And that's again, that is where this is maybe the first cartoony aspect of it, is because it's not cartoony to get abducted, of course. It's not a joke at all. But to get tossed like Santa's sack into the fucking sleigh, okay, it's kind of comical. Like, bro, they literally just zip tied her up and just like whoop, 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 whoop. And then yeah, but the funniest part is the person who did this, and this is my favorite character in the movie, is Alex Kersakis, I guess, is like they got Bruce Leroy to be in this movie, the dude with the afro. Yes, you are a fan of him, right?
oh, sure, yeah. Afro dude is awesome in this film for sure. Yeah, I thought you were going to be talking about Big Guy. He was also
No,
amazing,
not my favorite. He's not my favorite. The afro dude is definitely my favorite.
Sure. Yeah. No, Afro guy is cool. Yeah, this is like the goon squad over here, basically. You've got the guy with the afro, you've got the big kind of portly guy who they utilize as if being a big guy is just makes you a tank inherently, which is kind of funny. But yeah.
But limber.
Extremely for a big guy, absolutely. But no, my thing was there were times in this film, this is certainly where it starts off, where I felt myself just smiling. Obviously, like you said, these are serious things, of course. Like the actual, like if you took these in like a real world setting, these are very serious things. But the way that they portray it, it was like it's one of those things that you're like, oh my fucking god! It's like it's you're watching it and it's like it's fun the way that they're doing it. There's a time during the chase where he's holding the
Yes.
girl over. I mean, like it was like, dude, he like tosses her up with her legs. She like goes like ragdolling for a second there. I mean, these are just like funny things to see in the circumstances. Like, you know, again, you're not thinking about them in terms of like real world elements. Again, cartoonish, but that's why you can allow your mind to disconnect the two, you know?
And this is where I think the trailer does its first great thing, because when you're watching the movie, you're like, oh, okay, or when you're watching the trailer, excuse me, you're like, oh, she's kidnapped. He chases down the truck. He's obviously not fast enough. When you watch the movie, oh, he's fast enough. He catches that truck about 4 times. He catches up to the full speed truck in flip flops. He's a beast, brother.
Dude, the truck that's why I was saying, like the first half of this movie, I was so locked in.
Yeah.
That sequence is one of the best that I have seen on film in like a decade, I have to say. I was so locked into that sequence. It was awesome. It was just fucking awesome. I mean, like, you know, there was the one time where the big guy comes out with like, I guess a steel rod or something that has like a big
And
concrete.
smashes it.
Yeah, and it was like, where the hell did that come from? That's just like, you know, new, like it just was like you're getting all this different information, and it really like, because this is, I think that's the first time that we see the main character, the father, really engage in like fighting. So it's like you kind of don't know that about that character specifically. Up until that point, we'd only seen the reporter doing any real fighting. So like this is his time to show like that he's actually like a badass himself, and then to have all of what happens with that being the things that show that, I thought it was great.
No, absolutely. And so, you know, the chase scene is a lot longer than the trailer would allude to, and it is great, phenomenal. And so it ends up, you know, after again, there would be more to break down with the fighting itself. Like I could tell you that that he grabs the Afro disco guy and throws him up against the cage, and it breaks and it falls off to the side. But there's just so much that's going on. Like it is very hard to not keep up with in the moment, because you are keeping up with it. Like there's a lot going on. They use the weapons in a lot of, and when I say weapons, I mean just steel bars and fucking sledgehammer, you know, things that are tools that are used as weapons, and they are using them in very unique and ways that you have never seen them maneuvered, because you don't see people swing a fucking sledgehammer like they're going to swing at somebody. And obviously they're doing it in performative ways, but it's still, in your mind, you'd be like, yeah, you could probably get momentum like that if you actually really tried, kind of deal. But there was just a lot going on to break down the actual moves and fights themselves. But
Yeah,
just
there's too
know they
much.
were
Yeah.
fucking awesome. They were pretty
Right.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's way too much to like to be trying to break it down piece by piece. But one thing that I wanted to keep from the spoiler free part that I will say here, there's only one gun in this movie, by the way. I mean, there's one gun total. I mean, I was like really keyed into this aspect of it. Yeah, I mean, think about it. You're not going to be able to find another one. There is
At
one.
the end,
No, when at the end was there a gun? Oh, I mean, okay, with the cops. Yeah, okay. Fair
yeah, I
enough,
mean,
fair enough.
yeah, I was
All
sitting here
right,
thinking, like, come on, there was a
with the
whole unit of cops.
there's only one gun really utilized aside from the cops, I guess. I
Okay,
should
gotcha.
say.
Okay,
Yeah, like,
okay, yes, I was okay.
so
I'm
yeah,
with you.
maybe
Yes.
the guy. Yeah, I
I
maybe
will
should-
agree with
fair
you.
enough.
There are no firearms are not utilized in the
Exactly.
way that, like, if I had a gun, all of this movie would be over. You know, like
Right.
this
Yeah.
movie relies on not having firearms for sure.
There you go. There's the point. Exactly. And really, there's only one gun in like the early lead up that is actually plays a part in anything. So it's like you said, real world items. You know, getting hit with. But there's so many real world items. I mean, we'll talk when we get to the end. They fight with bicycles in this film. People, literal bicycles being used as weapons. This is a crazy thing.
I'm glad you brought this up. Just as my little foreshadow, if you are here, go watch Step Brothers, and there's a scene where they fight on the lawn with a bicycle and like a cricket bat. That's exactly what the end of this movie is, by the way. But I digress. So yes, so after this, he chases the truck. He gets thrown off. He gets beat up. He beats them up. You know, they run off, snickering, ha ha ha. Anyway, he goes home. He's mad now. He's got to figure. He actually, sorry, he goes to the police station first. He goes to the police station and he writes down the notes. A guy with afro, bald fat guy, blue truck, and they're like, this is not a report, brother. Like, we have procedures. You know, go write that paper over there. And he's like, and then he walks by the missing kids posters, and he's like, you know, and this is where, because, like, you know, they're obviously not going to do anything. I think the police chief even walked out, and he's like, no can do, brother. We're not going to look into it. And
Right.
so when he walks out and he looks at the missing kids poster, you as the audience member, you're like, oh, he's going to fucking get him. Oh, he's going to get
Well,
him.
yeah, and I mean, again, for a simple story like this, very obvious, like obviously telegraphing that A, the cops are not going to help, and B, like if you can take two steps further, you kind of infer that the cops might be a little bit in on it. I mean, like I already got that impression. They make it a little bit obvious when at the end of the scene they pan up to the big "to serve and protect" sign. I was like,
Yes.
okay, yeah, obviously they are not serving nor protecting in this film, but to be expected.
But just so I'll give you the foreshadow, there is a lady cop character who, again, when it goes back to the sub and dub thing, she speaks English. She is one of the main cops, of course. She is a sergeant or something. She becomes a little important later on. Maybe there's a little more to talk about with her, but just know that there's an English speaking cop. Her partner is the guy who's the one of two people who do not speak English 100%. Sometimes they do, sometimes it's subtitles, sometimes it's just a complete dub over. And that's just the cops right there, and then the chief, who's clearly corrupt. You find you know that off rip, like he's not doing shit with his fucking job. But so yes, so he walks out. Our main character, that is the Chinese mute, is how they call him. It's kind of aura. I don't know. That's just me. But so he goes home and he's fixing an ice bath. He's tending his wounds. You see that he's all fucked up, and then you get narration over from the lady cop, and she's like, I can't find anything about him. He's got no name. He's never done anything. He's never done, and this is where I was making the point. It's like, this is supposed to be the mystique to parents. It's like, they don't have to be anybody. It's like, just the endearing love for their kid is like what will drive them to do something like
Yeah,
this,
and he also kind of reconfirms that towards the end of the film, where they're like, who are you really? And he's like,
Yes.
I'm just a dad, man. I'm just a parent.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that all tracks, and then so he kind of is like remembering some details about this thing, and then he remembers some symbols, I think, and then matches them up
Yes.
to where we end up going. And this is where we have our very loose connection to combat sports that make it so that we could be reviewing this on this channel. He remembers that the symbol matches up with a nightclub, I guess.
Yes.
So we go to this nightclub, and that is where we have our cage, and there is a Muay Thai being fought at this club. Also, I wanted to make this point too. Having watched the credits, I stay around for the credits, of course. They did not set it up to be Thailand, but if like you watch the credits, you will realize that this is a Thai production, basically, is from what I gathered. So he might be Chinese, and like they didn't specifically make it Thailand, but if you put Thailand in the place of this location that he is at, it kind of informs a lot of the things here.
Gotcha. No, this is actually one of the sicker parts of the movie. I really like this one. So yes, so he's thinking back with his feet in the ice. He got a bag of trash thrown. That was a really funny part of the fight in the blue truck that we talked about, and I'm glad that we get to bring it up later, because he remembers they threw trash on him. Like they picked up a bag and threw trash on him, and then he remembers seeing like an ATM receipt or something from this nightclub, and so he remembers the logo, and he's at the nightclub. That's just how quick this shit comes. He is at the front door, and you're supposed to believe, like, yeah, no time wasted. I mean, he figured out. Actually, he gets his clothes on. He puts on his steel toe boots that his daughter got for him. I really like that aspect of it too. She brought up earlier, like, when he was working, because he's a handyman. He was working in flip flops. I told you he was running after the blue truck in the flip flops. She's like, "Why aren't you wearing the steel toe boots I got you?" And he just kind of smiles it off, like, all right, come on. So he wears the daughter's steel toe boots, which is a pretty sick feature when we talk about here in a little bit. He goes to the nightclub, and this is this where we meet our second character?
Yes, it will be. But I wanted to say about, like, what you just said about like drawing the line from the trash to the nightclub.
Yes.
If you bog yourself down in the idea of like, well, how did he like really make that connection? It's just some random trash. You don't do that. Like in fact, if you should allow yourself to not go down that line of thinking, because if you did do this whole big like investigation thing, I have to really like dig deep to find. It's like it's a bunch of fluff that doesn't move the story along in this type of a story. So I was perfectly happy with, he saw this, he lined it up, and now he's at the nightclub. Cut out the middleman,
Well, and if you remember, he showed the card to the cop. No time. There's no time that
Right.
I have to do. So you have to assume that everything that he's done is as quick as possible. He found that nightclub in 13 seconds when he thought of the image. He was like, "Oh, I've fucking been there. I know plenty of fucking fighters. Whatever you want to. You could connect the dots in your own way.
Right.
Know that he got there as quick as possible. He in his past, he knew somebody that worked there. He knew the boss. He fought there. It doesn't even have to matter. Just know he's at the front fucking door. Not even just in the door. He's walking in. He's got his hat on and he's incognito. He's looking for the Afro guy. And
Yes.
and guess who happens to be at the goddamn club that day and not looking for a good day, I'll tell you that. It's the Afro guy.
For
So
sure. Yeah. He's seeing that. He's in the club. This is where we've got Muay Thai happening in the cage as well. So that was kind of, a little interesting as, just recently we were talking about fighting inside of clubs. I forget what the context was. We were talking
Peyton
about this
Talbot.
in the Discord. Yeah. Oh, right. Yes. Because Peyton Talbot was DJing at one of those. Yeah. This is not uncommon, so kind of a cool like thing in general. Like when I eventually go over to Thailand, I would like to see if that's kind of the real deal. Just you're in a regular nightclub like we would have in the States, but there's just Muay Thai happening amongst all of the drinking and regular nightclub stuff. But so cool atmosphere in this place. Lighting really cool in this place. Definitely, cool club scene. And then yes, this is also where we meet our essentially what becomes like the second protagonist. They become like a
Yeah.
duo basically. But this other guy is going there under the guise of wanting to be a purchaser of children. Basically, is what we will eventually find out he is like trying to infiltrate. But he's going there to try to make a deal with the baddies. And so we get the scene where our secondary protagonist guy is meeting with who we think at the time, I guess, is one of the bigger bad guys. And they're having like a discussion about it. And this bad guy that he is meeting with is one of my favorite characters in this film. I think his name is Mr. Song.
Yes.
Yeah, he is fucking hilarious. Cartoon characters throughout this film. This guy is really fun. Like he's one of
The
those
hick.
like, yeah, he's got a cowboy hat on, he's like, he laughs a lot, he's one of those guys that laughs very menacingly and all that. So I thought his character was really cool. So they're trying to work out a deal for literally for children. I liked also another detail about that with when it comes to our secondary protagonist. You can tell that like he's obviously he needs to play a bad guy in this moment, but he doesn't go so far down the bad guy rabbit hole, because if you heard, his purpose for wanting to buy these children is to make them work on a fishing vessel.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love it.
So, so it's like, again, I thought that was cool to the character, because it's like, yeah, he knows he has to play a bad guy, but like he didn't want to make it for the same stuff that that first kid got.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, this guy, the second protagonist, if I were to say they knew Josh Van was the champ, because they cast somebody that I watched the movie and I said, damn, Josh Van is the secondary character in this movie right here. I love it. God damn. Because no, this dude was awesome. You're right. So he's breaking bread. He's telling him like, yo, I want 30 kids. And I want them up front, and then I'll bring you money back. And the boss man's like, yeah, you think you're gonna come in here and demand everything? Yeah, you got another thing coming. So he plays the card like, yeah, well, my boss sent me, so if I don't show up, then he's gonna come. So he plays the hand. The country Asian guy, whatever's going on with this character, the cowboy hat wearing guy, he laughs it off. They have a good time. We found out earlier, and this is actually not where we get introduced to our second character, but we had known of his existence earlier because we found out he has been spying on the bad guys up until this point. So this was the second iteration of that. He had a handkerchief that had a camera in it, and so he was recording the cowboy hat wearing guy and making sure he got his face and getting all the ins and outs of this operative, of course. And so at the time when this is happening, you go back downstairs where our guy, our Chinese mute, he is walking around and he's looking for answers, and he sees the Afro guy, and he walks upstairs and they stop him and they're like, yo. And then he walks over and he flips his hat off and he's like, who the fucker? And he realizes like, oh shit, it's this guy again. And then so we start fighting, and now we have a big old brawl in the nightclub. And so very quickly it goes over the railing into the octagon, which this is the start of the more interesting aspects of this movie, because you have the two guys, you have the Afro guy, and then you have our mute character in the cage. The Afro man runs out, locks him in there with the Muay Thai guys. And now they are going to fight our guy. So that was a very funny aspect, that is like no more competition against each other. Your job is to beat up the random dude in the cage, and now you're locked in there with him. So in theory, if you're locked in the cage with the baddest man on the planet, what's going to happen? Well, our main character wins very, very easily against these professional athletes, is what it looks like. So
Yeah, well, in keeping with the character, he's wielding a hammer because he's a handyman. So, like, the hammer is the weapon of choice for this.
that came out after a few. That came out. He was beating up like 7 people,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
he
yeah.
pulled out the hammer, and he
Oh,
was like,
for
"All right,
sure.
9 is enough," and then I'll just start.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely, again, kung fu film, but like this is again the evolution of this style of film, because like back in the day, in like a '70s version, it would be the big circle and they would all attack at once. Now they've realized you can't really do that anymore. I mean, it's got to like be more realistic than that, as far as like people all kind of being more of a free for all kind of thing. And so for that, yeah, you have this big brawl inside of the cage. You could say that this is about as close to mixed martial arts as you're going to get in this film, because it is like, the kung fu guy against the Muay Thai fighters for a second. A little bit of a stretch, a bit of a stretch to be saying that. But yeah, again, action sequence in the club, it's fighting inside the cage for a very little bit, completely external to actual any, sanctioned style fighting, any competition style fighting, but they're fighting in there. They go outside of the cage. They're fighting out there. They're going all over the club, fighting all over the place. Guy, the other reporter protagonist, now we'll eventually find out that he's a reporter. Our secondary protagonist is upstairs. He's having to deal with what's going on upstairs, because now pandemonium has broken out in the club. And eventually those two guys end up meeting. Our protagonist number 1 and then the Chinese mute end up kind of having an encounter themselves.
So before they meet, there's this one specific part that I cannot stop thinking about in the movie, because the sound design and the way they executed it. So we were in the cage last where we left off, and then our mute character jumps out the cage because he sees the Afro Man. He got away and he's running upstairs. So he jumps over the cage. He's running upstairs after him. Afro Man turns around to defend himself, and the mute character strikes a pose and then does like a body kick to him. And then you get the impact, and you see the steel toe, but it's like a woof. And
Yeah,
like
hell yeah.
it was like it was what the Den Mach should have been, really. Like and I just can't believe, like, he really hit like the crane pose and then body kicked him. Like, he had him like flinch up top and then kicked him in the stomach. And I was like, this is peak right here. This is peak. So anyway, yes, our Josh Fan character is fighting down the stairs, and then they bump into each other, and he knocks the Afro Man over the fucking railing into the cage again, and he fucking knocks himself, like he like almost kills that dude or something. He's like gurgling up fucking spit, whatever. So yes, he runs off, and he's downloading the security footage, and this is where our mute character chases him down, and he's like, all right, you're the guy too, so I'm gonna fuck you up because you just fucked up the guy that I was gonna fuck up to get answers. And this is where we meet in like a little security office kind of area, and this is the showdown between our 2 main characters. Yes.
Yeah. So they don't realize that they're on the same team basically at this point. They're fighting each other, and then throughout the course of the fight, it basically comes out, through various means, that they are actually on the same side. And he's like, hey, I'm trying to help too. And then that's he's taking the footage because we will eventually find out that he is the husband of the woman who was the reporter early on. He is continuing her work basically.
Absolutely. And this is actually a really crucial point and very funny part of the story that I forgot about this nightclub. So when he was getting ready, he put on his steel toe boots, our mute character, he packed a picture of his daughter, right? Yes. And so when he walked in, and this is how our 2 protagonists realize they're on the same side. He sees the picture and he's like, yo, you're looking for her. I'm not with them. I'm looking for the kids. So our mute character, when he walks into the club, he's got the picture and he puts it in their face, and they don't tell him what he wants. He just beats him up. And then he goes up to the Afro guy and he puts the picture in his face, and he beats him up when he don't tell him. And then like after he beats him up a few more times, he walks up to him and he shows him the picture again, and he still doesn't want to help him. So he beats him up again. So it's a really funny part to the story. He's like, he can't say anything. He just shows you the picture. And if you don't have the answers that he wants, you are getting fucked up. Like, and that's just how it is, man. I love it.
Yeah, one man army for sure. You know, he's on a mission and he will not be stopped. He has a one track mind to get his daughter back, and it certainly works. So, yeah. So you know, the two now main characters together, basically. You know, they're now becoming a team. The two of them. The reporter guy takes him to his truck, which is like kind of his mobile workstation as well.
Home.
Shows him, yeah, his home workstation, everything. He's been living out of his van basically to, you know, I like it for the story, really. You know, it's a guy who lost his, you know, he doesn't know where his wife is. We will eventually find out, you know, what happened to her. But, you know, he's trying to put the pieces together. You know, this is a story that is much bigger than him. And now, you know, he's essentially, you know, his wife has been separated from him because of it. So he's trying to figure it all out, and he's devoted his life to it.
This is actually a really funny part too, because they're sitting in the front of the truck and they're watching the security footage, and he's like, "You see that? You see it right there?" And he's like, "Hold on, let me show you something." And then they go to the fucking back of the car. It's like, dude, you could have just like, you know, like it was like we were going somewhere else. Like, let's go in here and look at it. And it's like, no, he just opened the fucking back of his car. You know, like it was kind of funny. And then our mute character solved the entire fucking riddle in 30 seconds.
That was pretty funny. Yeah, I was like, you know, this guy is. I mean, what I will allow for this, two things. One is that they did at least show us that the wife, they showed a picture of the wife and the husband early on in the intro to everything, and the wife is wearing a gi and she has a black belt on. So like at least there's some basis for martial arts to be in any part of their lives, because my thought was these are some kick ass fucking reporters over here, like Jesus Christ. But so that's point number one. Point number two with that is that yes, this guy, you know, I say that to say I will allow that this guy is maybe not a very good reporter, you know what I mean, or a very good, you know, journalist, analyst kind of person.
No, I think you're wrong. I think you're misinterpreting. He's not a reporter.
Right. That's what I mean, is that he's not, he's only become one because of the situation.
Yeah. So he's portraying his wife who is missing. He is pretending to be her to continue on her journalism. So he's not necessarily built for this. He ain't necessarily have a career for it. As of what we've seen, what he can do with fighting, it seems probably likely that he had been, you know, a martial artist or something, you know, whatever the story may be. So I kind of take, I make joke of it like he solved it in 30 seconds, but yeah, this dude's not he's not a detective, you know, he's just a guy.
That's what I'm getting at, is that, you know, because it is very funny that the Chinese mute takes 3 pictures off of the wall. Like, you know, he's got like his wall of all of the, you know,
all the pictures were there too, by the way. He had the answers right in front of him.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, I have to give it to the film to just be like, yeah, you know, he might have had the answers, but he couldn't figure out the puzzle, you know, that kind of thing. Because yeah, 3 pictures is like, doot. Yep, this is the story here.
And so the pictures all had this ice truck in it, you know, the local ice truck, and he's like, "Oh, this makes sense, you know, it's ventilated, or you know, it's soundproof or whatever, you know,
yeah,
you can't
the insulation."
There you go. And so we show up to the ice factory, and this is another thing. It's like, yeah, we don't need to see them drive 20 minutes to have a conversation where he's doing sign language. You know, just get us to the fucking ice factory, because that's where we are next. And you know, the funny thing is our main mute character just tries to get the fuck out. He's gonna just walk right the fuck in there, and he's like, "Oh," Josh Van stops him, and he's like, "Hold on, we need a plan. Like, what is your idea of a plan?" And I think he says, "Feint east, attack west," or that's what he writes down for him. And then he gets out, and then they go on about their day. And this is a really funny part too, because you don't get to see our 2 characters go on 2 different ways. You know, our main character goes in the front, side character goes in the back. You know, our main character, we don't get to see his first portion of this fight, because he just walks in there, pushes a gate open, and he's like, you're fucking dead. And then and then it just cuts to the other character sneaking in the back. It's like, okay, you can rightfully assume by where we come back to him in a second that, yeah, all those people really had a bad day after he walked in that room, you know? So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they're going in there, and this is our next big set piece as far as the fighting goes, because this fight inside of the ice factory I thought was also pretty awesome. So you know, to set this up a little bit too, like we had some portions, like it's kind of interspersed throughout some of this portion of the film, where like we cut away to the daughter, and now she's amongst all of the other children that have been kidnapped. Basically, she's forming a little bit of a relationship with the one kid who has the leg, the one that set her up, basically. And so like, you know, we're kind of just you know, aware of their goings on or whatever, and that's where we find out that the kid who set her up his father is the Afro guy,
Yeah.
and so because Afro guy brought a rat into the operation, which was the reporter guy, the secondary protagonist guy, he's getting iced quite literally, and so they
Yes.
put it they freeze him in a block of ice. That apparently they've been doing this to a number of people that they don't like, or who went against the family or whatever. So you've got people just frozen in blocks of ice. This will become very important to this fight later on.
This is again where I say this is kind of on a spoof level, cartoony, but like they take it so serious. Like this is something that you would see in an Austin Powers movie. Put him on ice, and then they put him in a giant ice block like that. It's like, okay, you know what? Like if you ever saw a date movie or some shit like that, where the giant lemon head in the Willy Wonka spoof portion of that movie, if you get that reference, that's exactly what this is right here. And so yes, it is a great portion where they are literally blocks of ice. Han soloed up, basically.
Literally what I thought. Yeah, exactly. They are ice instead of carbonite. But yeah, so I mean, that's at least it will play a part because again, to the cartoony nature of this thing, a huge set piece fight breaks out in this place. This is where big guy ends up becoming the tank that we know him to be. Takes a sledgehammer to the side of the head. That's another thing that got a pretty big reaction in the theater. But so they're fighting throughout all of this ice factory. The two guys, faint east, attack west, or whatever. They meet up in the middle. Finally, they fought their way into this factory, and now there's this scene of all of the fighting with the big guy, and then they're going through, and all of these things are happening. At one point, he ends up breaking the block of ice with a dude in it and just decapitating a guy
Yes.
inside of the block of ice. I was like, this is fucking. That's another one that I was like laughing at like how like crazy that it all is. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely awesome. One thing to note is in this scene how it started. So we have the main character who walks in, and he's got the guy with the overalls, whatever you want to call it, the big tank bald guy.
Right.
We later find is supposedly the son of the cowboy wearing hat guy, whatever. So he's fighting our protagonist, the secondary guy who came in through the back. He has got the cowboy guy on his tail with the shotgun. He's shooting him while they're fighting, and he's missing every shot. So anyway, so the two protagonists are dodging bullets for the time being. After this is where they did they knock out the big guy at this point, or this was before they knocked him out? I'm trying to think how they would have maneuvered fighting him and getting away from the shotguns, but that's just how the movie is. So eventually they drop a fucking cabinet on the cowboy hat wearing guy. He's done shooting. They end up beating up the overall guy, and our protagonist is beating him to death, and Josh Van stops him, and he's like, don't kill him, he's our last lead, blah 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 blah. But then they just get the cowboy hat wearing guy, and like they leave that guy alive. It was kind of a weird portion of like, why keep him alive if you have this guy? Did they not think he was still alive? Then why not kill him? I was kind of like, it was weird right there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I maybe they were doing that to the cowboy hat guy, saying that about him. I don't remember that
Yeah,
portion
maybe.
exactly, because like, yeah, you're right, because that'll eventually be a very important point. Is that they just kind of let the bald guy. I mean, I would assume that they thought he was dead, but yeah, he's out of commission at least. So now they've got the cowboy hat guy. Either way, and that was the one time that the gun played a part. That was the one gun I was talking
Oh
about, was the
yes.
shotgun. But aside from that, really, when it comes to like the fighting, not many guns involved. So yeah, so that was the only time that there really was a gun in play in a legitimate fighting capacity. They take the cowboy hat guy, and now they're interrogating him. They're like electrocuting him to try to get information out of him. And eventually he finally does reveal something. He lets go the name of the snake pit, which
Oh no,
was
that's not what he. No, what he says that really triggers him is he was like, you can keep trying to hang around, and we're gonna deal with you like that last reporter. And then he was like, "What did you like? Who are you talking about? Was it her?" And he was like, "I don't know who that is, dude. I don't
oh
know who
yeah,
it is."
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then he shocks him again or whatever. But
Right.
I don't remember when he said the snake pit or something. I don't think it might not have been him that said that.
I,
I'm
I
trying to
thought it
think.
was. I mean, because that's where they end up going after that. So I mean, I would assume that's he who said it. I thought it was, but either way, yeah, we do find out that that obviously the reporter, the woman, was involved, in all of this, and that he was the cowboy hat guy had something to do with her disappearance.
Yeah, actually, before we move on to the next scene, going back to the part about the gun, probably the weaker point in the movie was that portion with the gun. And I think what I would say to that, and maybe they had a character who they needed him to be older. They can't have him do the kung fu kind of stuff. So let's give him a gun and let's just figure out how to make the other guys work around it, is maybe my thought process to what was happening there. But yet
Either that or just variety.
eh, you're, yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. It was definitely not the. But either way, getting back to, yes, they're torturing the cowboy hat wearing guy, and after he gives up the information, they let him leave because he walks out and he's all getting dressed and he's staggering about, and then he gets a fucking arrow through his leg. And then this is where we get to see our guy with the bow and arrow from the beginning, who we really don't know who he is, and then we get to see the new big boss guy, clearly the bigger boss than who this guy is, and he's a young guy, very, speaks good English, by the way. This is a thing about this character, is he speaks English. We've seen him actually just a couple different points before in the movie with his wife who's pregnant. She was, whatever you want to say. He's here. He shot our cowboy hat wearing guy in the leg. He didn't do it. He had his goon do it. Excuse me. And now he's about to drop some bars on him. So go ahead.
Yeah, this guy, like you said, we see him at select points earlier on, just kind of teasing this character a little bit, but he's a very prim and proper kind of guy. One of these bad guys that's like the overlord bad guy. He's not like the dirty work guy at this point anyway. He lets the underlings do that.
Yeah, and we find out he is the son-in-law to the police chief. The daughter is the daughter of the police chief is the woman that he's having a child with. Is kind of how this interconnects. Yeah.
Was that what it was? Because I thought that it was that. No, I don't think it was the police chief that was the father-in-law, though, because he was there at the end. But like, I thought it was the father-in-law. I don't know exactly know what the father-in-law was. Just another guy that was like an underworld guy, but like he didn't like.
But neither of them look like her father. Let me say it that way.
Definitely that. Yeah, for sure. A little bit of a loose connection you have to make in your mind as far as the characters go with that part of it. But yeah, we know that whatever it is that they are doing nefarious, because they talk about it later on. They didn't know that he was involved with child trafficking. That was an interesting point. The guy was like, "Oh, this guy is trouble. I told you that." And he was like, "Oh, if I had known it was child trafficking or whatever." Yeah, whatever. Anyway, the point is that like whatever the father-in-law does nefarious, he obviously does it very well, because one of the major locations in this film is this ridiculously opulent mansion. Like this thing is like so massively huge. Quite a location for this family to be living in.
I'm actually glad you brought it up, because yeah, when I saw we saw the insides of it a few times, and I was like, what the fuck do you have something so big for? But then when we saw the outside of it, I don't, maybe I'm just getting old to where when I see a house so big, it's like, what do you fucking need that for, bro? Like, come on. You have a helicopter pad on your roof. Like, come on.
I literally thought the same thing. I always think that with any kind of house that big. I'm like, if you have a family of what, maybe at most 6, you're still not taking up a tenth of the space of a mansion of this size, because this place is massive.
And then they're all fucking marble floor and shit. It's like, you can't even have kids on that. Like, come on. Like, ugh.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so the new big bad guy, the prim and proper bad guy, the wife is pregnant. This is the daughter of this other bad guy that he's working with. And they have a scene where she's having the sonogram to the talk about again, connections of this a big theme of the story here. Just personal connections, family relations, those types of things. So that this guy is has the wife, and they're going to have a child. But so now going back to the main crux of everything, where we do end up in that snake pit location, though, at this point.
Yes, we show right up to the snake pit, and that one's pretty funny, because like they don't even know they're there, and it's like, you just got to go with the story at this point, because like they show up and he's like, hey, guess what? You see that? And they're like, it's like a infinity snake logo, and it's like, it's pretty cool, and it's like, all right, that's where they're at. Let's go on in. And they just now we're here, because the thing about the ice block, when the kids were making their connections and having a good time, they had tried to escape. So you find out with the sonogram thing, I believe, is when you find out actually is they had moved the kids after there was an incident where the kids tried to escape. So we moved them to the snake pit.
Right.
And this is now we arrive at the snake pit. We have our two main characters, and they're ready to go in there, and they look in the door and they're like, we're gonna find another way in, so they go in through the back way. And I think they might even drop the same line, feign east, attack west, and they just go in and like they're ready to start whooping ass.
Yeah,
um
exactly. And this is, so as you said, they bounce the kids from one place to the other because these kids are that's the value to this organization. So, they're protecting their investment, so to speak, these kidnapped children. And so, we're seeing the kids trying to kind of like have their own play on all of this. The daughter, again, the daughter has agency in this film. So she's like, if we stay here, we're definitely doomed. She's trying to figure out ways to escape. The other kids are like, this is going to be a problem. Why are you trying to do this? Whatever. She's like, nah, I mean, I have to do something. I can't just not do anything, which I was like, again, I like this for this character. She's got drive to self-preservation and all this, and to also help her new friends here. Essentially, she's becoming bonded with these other children through the course of this very traumatic incident. So she's trying to do that. And eventually, as the protagonist, the secondary protagonist, and our mute Chinese guy go work their way into this building, she ends up taking the faceplate off of a breaker box and
yep.
uses that as her own weapon. This is one thing about this film. I was thoroughly expecting there to be more child foo. I thought that there were going to be more kids doing more actual martial arts themselves. Not as much of that as I was expecting based on the way that the story was leading up to that potentially being the case. But still, I thought that for what they utilized the children for in an action capacity, I thought it was pretty decent. So she takes that faceplate, she cuts one of the guys as he's coming in, and she basically allows the opening to get all of them out. So now the kids are out in the open. We've got our two protagonists coming in to try to save them, right? That's where we're at this point.
Yeah, so there's a crucial point to make here. So before they go in, and I forgot to say, this is on the protagonist side. Obviously, the kids are escaping. They are now running about. Right before our protagonists go in there and start the other end of the operation here, we have the kids running forward and they're meeting them in the middle. We start a live stream. Josh Van puts a live stream in his pocket, and he's like, listen, these kids are being held here. I'm going to show you guys everything. It's corrupt. You guys got to help us. Please do something. He puts the camera in there, and then he's recording our mute character while he walks through and beats the hell out of people. And this is where only our main kid protagonist, she is able to get far enough away from the captors that she can make it to her father. We are actually at the point where she gets to safety. Her father's there. They're hugging. They're having a good time. But all the other kids are captive, and she doesn't want to leave them behind. But this is where, and I thought this was a really good point, Josh Van stops, and he's like, you're good. You're good. You and your dad go home. You made it to safety. This is me. I started this. I'm going to finish it. Go on, and I'll meet you on the other side. And I really like that part right there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I thought that was great. And then, we'll talk about what ends up happening thereafter to kind of bring everybody back into the fold. But the other part of what I wanted to mention with the live stream element of it, this dude, if he's not a great actual reporter, if he's just thrust into this reporter role, he somehow has a massive social media following because everybody finds out about this live stream. It gets a lot of publicity. People are watching it all over the world, kind of thing, whatever. It's getting a lot of eyes on it. So people are recognizing this location and they're all kind of gathering around it. In addition to that, the police become aware of this. So you have the police all congregating at this location, as well as a large amount of the public. And crucial to this point as well is that the police chief, who we find out is in on the operation, says, stand down. You guys are not going in there. We're got to let it play out or whatever. He's trying to obstruct these police from doing anything about it. So you've got all these people out there being like, why are the police not helping? Police are standing out there just basically doing crowd control. And you've got the main guy and, the secondary guy in there trying to save these kids. That brings us to the point that you had mentioned where, the Chinese mute and the daughter end up leaving, but they kind of take a moment to themselves and realize, like, again, connection, human connection element of it. the protagonist, the secondary protagonist, and the main character, the Chinese mute, have formed a bond. They have a common, common compassion for what's been going on here. And the daughter has formed a bond with the kid who set her up. So like they know that they can't just leave. It would have been the easy way out for them to just walk away from this whole situation. But they have honor. They cannot do that. They cannot allow themselves to do that, knowing that other people are still in danger.
And that is true, but it also there is a key point here, and they may as well have turned around with or without that, but they turned around and went back after they saw about 50 people walk right through the police, and the police didn't do the police chief said, stand aside, let them in. And when I saw this portion, from what it looked like this was not the same type of vibes of the people in the snake pit. So from my opinion, I was like, oh, these are the people who are mad about the child trafficking.
I thought the same thing. I'm so glad you said that. Yes. So to set that up just a little bit more, the live stream had already been going on. All of the like regular civilians are outside and the police are outside. And you see this massive wave of like very thuggish looking dudes. There are a lot of people with face tattoos very noticeably. So it's like, obviously they're showing you that these are like the hardened kind of people. And I thought the exact same thing that you thought. I was like, oh, these are like street justice people trying to come in here. And like, no, apparently these are just a massive wave of
child traffickers. They support it.
This is the most widely spread thugged out child trafficking ring of all time. How did and where were these people throughout all of the rest of all of this was my question. I mean, like in the nightclub, you didn't see any of those guys.
Yeah, it was definitely a noticeably different vibe. You know, the people that we've been seeing up until this point were the suit wearing kind of kung fu kind of guy. These were the bikies. These were bikies that showed up, and I was kind of hyped for it. I was like, oh my god, we're gonna see the justice and then the bad guys, and we're going to see them head to head with our protagonists, like kind of maneuvering between that. And it's just not what the story was, unfortunately. These were just more of the people in support of child trafficking.
Correct.
So they walk in here, and this is where our protagonist, our mute character and the daughter, they look back and they're like, damn, we got to go save him. I mean, he saved us. He brought us back together. We got to go save him. And this is where the comedy goes to a bajillion. They get on a fucking motorcycle. And key this in. So you get a shot from top down looking at a staircase, right? And you see all of our biker gang guys funneling up the stairs, one floor at a time. There's 30 people. They appear on the top floor with this motorcycle. How'd they get up the stairs?
I mean, did they go all the way up? I didn't even remember that part.
They were on the top. They were on the top with Josh Van.
I mean, yeah, it's true, because these the amount of people. I mean, like, you cannot overstate how like many people they were. Like all of these the gangster guys. So I mean, like there was one point where they drove
you get the first
corridor.
person point of view of the motorcycle,
Love it,
mowing people. Oh, and it was so goofy, but for this movie, it actually worked out well. And like, you're not supposed to wonder how it fucking works. You're supposed to be like, oh yeah, he picks her up and she dodges the weapon, and then he puts her down and she ducks. It's like, if you are a fan of a game where you are the main character and you have a little side character that does little things for you, like a God of War with, Atreus or whatever that little kid's name is, that is kind of what you were watching here. You're watching the dad and daughter duo fight off 50 people. And you're just supposed to believe that, like, well, she wants to do kung fu because her dad wants to do it with her right now. Like, you're just supposed to believe, like, she's that good. She can survive against grown men toe to toe, like, I don't know. It's crazy. I love it.
Certainly so. So yeah, so, they're rolling back in to help save the day over here. You've got these kids who are still in danger, and our secondary protagonist guy is in there trying to continue to save them. And all of these other guys are advancing on them. And so the kids end up on the top floor, and they're trying to, figure out a way out. The daughter ends up back with the kids and is like, kind of, they do like the classic kerchief
escape
rope.
Prison.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. The tie the sheets together kind of thing. So they do that. And and their other guys, the Chinese mute and the protagonist are back. They're still fighting everybody off and doing all of that kind of stuff. And finally, the cops end up like breaking rank. Basically, they're like, "No, we're done with this, dude. Like, there's too many people on the street watching this all go down." You know, they basically say, you know, screw you to the police chief. Cops are going to start rolling in here now.
Yeah. No, okay. And so there's a couple key things in this sequence. So, yes, there's from where we are after they drove the motorcycle, we basically move down the hallway. And so you have a little hallway where you have our protagonists where they are fending off the bad guys from getting to this staircase. This last staircase that we have is the last level of the place where, yes, the kids are trying to rappel down with the sheets while one of them holds it, which was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You're holding it around the pole. Just tie it to the pole, brother. You're holding, bro, you have a 12-year-old kid with a bum leg trying to hold 17 kids to rappel down a building. Like,
yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's a good point. Yeah, you could have just tied it. That is a very good point.
But either way, so yes, they after they get all the kids down, you know, we're arguing who's gonna go first, who's gonna hold it. It's like you both could have just went if you would have tied it, but either way. So yes, our main character our main kid character gets to rappel down, and as we do this, we cut back and forth between our parents who are holding the holding the line. Of course, they have this big pallet. They have a wooden pallet that they are holding, and when you talk about using things as weapons that are not necessarily, you know, useful items kind of deal, this was one of the more interesting ones. In an American film, if they would have been like, we want to use the pallet as a way, it's like they would have done one thing and they would have broke or they would have threw it off. It's like this was a pretty crucial point towards the end of this battle here, if you want to call it, because this is the last line of defense, is this little thing that they have. You see our Josh Van-esque character. He gets battered up against the wall. He's got the pallet on him. We got our main mute character is fighting back. He found a hammer and he's beating people up. He's helping them with the pallet. They're holding it up, but there's so many people that by the time that like the kids are almost safe, they are just shoved up against the wall to this, you know, pallet, and there's nothing left. And I actually kind of like this ending to their story for this moment right here. Is like, if the kids got out, the end of them was just right here. Like, they were not going to go anywhere. It wasn't going to be some miraculous type of Hail Mary that happens. And obviously we'll talk about with the police here in a second. But from that point of view, it's like that was it. That was the pallet, and they got shoved up against the wall, and there was nothing else left because there's 50 other people. And if the police wouldn't have stepped in, and or if the kids wouldn't have gotten to safety, that would have been the end of the story right there. So I kind of respect that there wasn't just a way that they figured it out. Whether, and even in this type of movie, if they would have, it would have been okay. But I'm glad that they didn't kind of deal. Like, it felt very grounded in the sense like, yeah, there was 50 fucking people just shoving them against the wall kind of deal.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this like really at this point would have been like where most logical conclusions would have been drawn to. You know what I mean? Like a lot like this type of film, if you were going into it, you would think this would be the big finale to everything. They had all of these 50 guys come in. They've held them off long enough. Finally, the police came in. The police woman. This is where I definitely screwed up by saying there was only one gun, because police woman hits one of the most ridiculous shots of all time. Yeah, yeah. She's on the ground. They're 50 feet in the air, or 50 stories in the air. This one of the bad guys is going for the daughter. She's finally going to be making her, making.
No,
her,
it's the bum leg kid.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right about that. Yeah, he's going for the kid with the bum leg, and because she'd already gone over. We thought she was about to fall to her,
Yeah,
her doom, but
she was repelling from the sheets, and the sheets ripped, of course, because that's how cliche this movie is. But as she's falling in slow motion, the community comes together. Yeah, they have that thing ready. Like they could have caught every single kid with that. Like, what are we talking about here? But yeah, so they caught her with the tarp. They laid her down. She looks up and she's like, "I'm having a good time." And then the bad guy grabs the kid with the bum leg. And then yes, we get the lady cop who pulls out her shot, and which is, I think there was a continuity error here, because I'm pretty sure she already went in the building. Like I was really confused when she ended up at the bottom of the building. I was like, she just said she was going around the back. Is this the back? I thought this was the front where all the news people were.
Oh, she went all the way around.
Okay, yeah, she did a whole revolt. Yeah, no, but yeah, so she comes in, she saves the day, she shoots that guy in the head. The kid doesn't fall off the roof as a grown man was holding him that just went lifeless. Doesn't fall off the roof. That is cool. Kids are all safe. The cops go into the hallway and they stop everybody from beating up our two main protagonists. But yes, like you are saying, like this is where you would be like, man, they did it. They saved the kids. But then if you remember the first 5 minutes of this movie and you look at Josh Fan and he looks like he's got a little left to do, it's like we got some shit left to go here. So I think good a really good point in the story where you get to realize like he had, we have our main character, but we also have this guy's story who's left to unfold. It's like we don't need a second movie. No, we got to wrap it up right now. He was what started it, is because she went in there to look for their kid, and now he's continuing this story. Our what we thought were the main protagonist really is just the side portion to his story kind of deal. And I really like that aspect of it. Another thing that I forgot to mention, this is back when they were on the motorcycle, and I just wanted your opinion. It's really quick. Did you have an issue with the dubbing where she would call him uncle?
No, I mean that's I think like a more just like a colloquial thing. I think that to call
I
the other
don't
guy, like, she was talking to the secondary protagonist
That's
guy.
what I thought. That's what I thought too. But I don't think so, because there were times where she was talking about her dad and it would say uncle. I'm like certain that it was a
No,
sub coming across.
I think it was when the limp kid was talking about the dad, was when he was calling him uncle.
I was a little confused on it, and I even thought, when you're, okay, she's talking about the uncle guy, or the side character uncle. It's like she doesn't know him.
Well, again, I think it's a cultural thing. I think that's
Okay,
like,
all right, fair,
just
yep.
more of a like, just respect thing, obviously. And again, really going back to the same point of relations. It's like, dude, you're part of the family now. If we've gone through
Yeah,
this together, kind of thing. I would
true.
think anyway. So yeah, all of that does end up happening. That's our big finale to the child abduction portion of everything. At that point, they end up at the police station. Now the non-corrupt cops are saying, okay, everything's been worked out here, but we have to hold you until you make bail. I guess
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I'm going to vouch for you, but we have to hold you overnight. I hope you understand. Kids are going to be taken care of, but Chinese mute has to stay in prison for the jail for the evening for, again, whatever the reason is, they make this reason up. But him and secondary protagonist guy are now in this little jail cell under the police station, basically.
And I think it was actually before this scene that we find out, but it's because the police are now involved that we go back to the big mansion. And this is actually this is probably the best scene in the movie. I really
It's
the
certainly
the
the most impactful scene in the movie.
Yeah, this was really kind of out of nowhere, really. Like, I don't think you could have expected something like this. So we go to the scene at the mansion, and we go into the house, or into the room, and we're breaking business. We have all the big bosses. We even have the police chief. He's there because he's like, "Yo, I can't even cover up for you guys anymore, And the big boss that hired the cowboy guy and all that stuff, he's like, you're a disappointment, man. Like you fucked up, you failed. And then our main young-ish villain, who is going to be the main villain, he's the guy who hired the bow and arrow guy, if you remember from earlier. He's like, I'm always a failure when it doesn't work out, but if I bring in you millions of dollars, you don't give a shit. I'm the best in the fucking world. And so yada yada yada, they start talking shit. And then a guy walks up to our main villain, and he's just like some random lackey. Like, who even was this jobber? I mean, he just walked up, put his finger literally in his face, and started talking shit.
Well,
And then
he's the guy that kept saying, I always told you this guy was trouble. And then
yeah,
like, all right, well, that finger is going to be, I
yeah.
don't like that anymore.
So he puts his finger in his face, and our main villain, our young villain, bites it off, bites his finger clean off, takes it out, puts it on the tray, and then kills every single person in the room, including the police chief with a bottle, including the father of his wife or whatever. And then in a fit of rage, as he's stabbing everybody and punching everybody, he turns around and stabs the last person who touches him. And of course, it is the woman who is supposed to have his baby, stabs her right in the stomach. She falls over and she dies. And this was pretty crazy. I mean, like, yeah, it could have been expected, of course, like, oh, he's gonna kill everybody, but like, you wouldn't expect her to be like, oh my god, what are you
Yeah,
You know,
I
like
mean
it was.
that was what I had mentioned earlier, where like that got an audible gasp from the crowd. I mean, it was definitely one of those like pretty intense moments. Yeah,
I think it was really cool too. I think this was a really, I mean, obviously, woman in white, like nothing new here, but the contrast to everything that was happening. As soon as you saw the white clothing, like you, because it had to pan up, like you had to see like the stab, and then it panned up to see like her, like feel. It's like once you saw the white dress, it's like, oh, you fucked up,
yeah,
you
maybe.
motherfuck.
Yeah, well, and this was like the whole scene was an interesting one because like up until this point, we knew he was evil because of what he was doing. This is also the scene where I had said that like apparently the father-in-law, who was also a baddie, but like he wasn't as bad as this guy because the father-in-law was like, I didn't know it was kids. I didn't know you were trafficking children. If it had been drugs or guns, that would have been okay, but kids, that's too far or whatever. So like we knew that the prim and proper bad guy was like he's a bad dude, but we didn't know he was this crazy of a bad dude. So like this is really like when he bit the finger off, that was like the turning point. Sets it up for all of this other, carnage that's going to be going on in this room. And so yeah, he's just going through killing indiscriminately, basically, to the point where his own mania ends up killing the woman that he loves. Again, family connection that is now disconnected here.
I love this portion of the story because as we go into the next scene, what he says later about this situation, he's like, "You fucking ruined my life." It's like, what are you doing? Like, what? How
Yeah.
did somebody else do this to you? Like,
I was supposed to be a father, and you took that away from me.
yes, yeah, exactly. That was exactly the line right there
Yeah.
too. Holy
So
shit.
But this is so yeah. So now we're getting back, back at the police station here. This, retribution has to happen. This is basically the main bad guy, prim and proper, needs to go and take care of this mute Chinese guy because this is why all of what went down just went down in his
Yeah.
mind. So he's rolling up with his bow and arrow guy, and they are rolling no regard for the police at all, which is kind of one of those interesting elements of any kind of story where it's like we already knew that the police were somewhat ineffective based on the fact that they were not doing anything about any of the stuff that was going on. If just the police chief is corrupt, but none of the police force is in on it, that shows you a little bit of a lack of effectiveness. Because like, why would nobody take a little bit more initiative? You know what I mean? Like nobody goes above and beyond. So obviously this is a not the we're not talking about the National Guard here. We're not talking about a like the elite team of law enforcement. So bow and arrow guy and our prim and proper villain roll up in the police station, and they are taking over shop here. Arrows are flying.
And at this time, I think this is where we find out that somebody is not dead.
Correct.
We have somebody who is going to wake up from a sledgehammer to the back of his head. And he's gonna, this is after his body was like neurologically not fucking working after it. Yeah, so he gets up
back at the ice factory. Our big guy, the big dude, has just sprung back to life, and now thinking that the cowboy hat guy was his father. That's in his mind. That's the relationship with the two of them. He's like, goes out front out of the ice factory and sees, because we didn't mention this, but the cowboy hat guy got a bunch of arrows.
No, we find that out right here. Yeah, he shows them pinned up against the truck. He walks outside of the ice factory, and the ice truck has the cowboy hat guy pinned up against it.
Yeah, we didn't see it back when it happened, but we did see the prim and proper guy confront him when he was about to try to leave, but we didn't see the aftermath. So that is the aftermath, is that cowboy hat guy is just riddled with arrows. And then, our big guy, who just woke up from his near-death experience, sees that, and now he wants revenge for the death of his father.
And what's actually kind of funny is this is where I thought we were gonna get. This is the sequel part right here, because they pan down to the cowboy hat, and and it's like, oh, he's gonna be the guy that puts it on, obviously, but he obviously comes back quicker than a second movie. So we get to this next scene. We're at the police station. We got the bow and arrow guy just going ham, killing every single person. He killed the breaker and everything. He has control of everything in this police station. And at this time, we have our two protagonists in the basement, in the one cell in this fucking police station, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And very coincidentally, when the police guy who was watching them ran out, he dropped his keys right within arm's, well, not right within arm's reach, because they're able to pry the bars far enough to be able to reach through and grab them, which was great. So yes, so by the time the bow and arrow guy is done eviscerating the entire police staff, which does include the main ones, the main one that did not speak English originally, and then the lady cop who actually ended up doing something, the sergeant, she gets just fucked over as well. She gets like a rod stuck in her neck, not by bow and arrow guy actually.
Well,
It's by the suit guy.
that is a question that I have because and we'll talk about it at the very very end here. But
Yes.
so anyway, okay, but yeah, so the implication though is that everybody in the police station is getting just worked over. These arrows are flying. She does get the steel rod. So yeah, these guys are working their way through. Kids are having to scatter, the two of them, because that now they're the target of these guys coming in, and obviously that this is why they're there. But then also big guy comes in, and now it's this whole dynamic of basically like a multi-man fight between a bunch of these people.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some interesting things that go on here because the fight splits off into a lot of different sections. So you have bow and arrow guy versus our Josh Van character for a big portion of this last final fight scene. And then you have our mute character and then the suit wearing guy. They have a big portion of a fight scene, but then they also interchange and swap together. And then you have the big guy who also jumps in here. So you kind of have five people fighting each other on one side of the screen. And there was one portion that was really funny. We haven't talked much about the camera things that they've done or the production things, but when all five of them had their standoff, and you get the shing 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 shing, and it's like all of their eyes across the screen. It was like out of a comic book, and it was kind of fucking awesome.
Pretty cool, yeah. But it also, I think, served a purpose to let you know these are your key players in this portion of the fighting. Because this, what I had said earlier during the spoiler-free portion, this is the part of the film that got a little bit bogged down for me. Just a little bit. It wasn't so bad that I was like, man, I'm not enjoying this, because I still was enjoying it. But like, it's a lot of fighting. And it's very prolonged. It's I mean, it's going over here. It's this guy fighting this guy. It's this, boom, boom. Like I said, it's all over the place with these five. Like you said, with the thing with the comic book is like to set up that like these are your players for this portion of the film. So like I was okay with that being the setup for everything, but they did let it draw out for a prolonged amount of time. This is your finale essentially to the film, basically. I mean, like as far as like the action goes. So I do understand that you want a big set piece to end it all up with, but like it just, I think that they might have been able to trim just a little bit to make it a little bit more satisfying. But again, minor nitpick in the big picture. But these are the circumstances here. So you, like you said, it breaks off. You've got the bow and arrow guy and the secondary protagonist guy. Josh Van, as you're calling him, that's where we find out that bow and arrow guy did take out the wife, the lady reporter.
Yeah, so there's three main finale portions to this last final fight.
Right.
So yeah, so you have the bow and arrow guy and our Josh Van look-alike. They have a very prolonged fight scene on the bottom area. So there's like an elevated portion, and then there's the floor. They're front and center on the floor, fighting with tables, ladders. There's knives, and Josh Van eventually, he's losing. He's clearly losing, and he sees the ring. He rips off the bracelet that the bow and arrow guy has, and he sees the ring on it. And, in his mind, he's fulfilled. I found her, my journey's over. So we're gonna
because the ring is the wife's ring, so it's like he's showing that and they talk about it at a point there too, like him and the bow and arrow guy, like he confirms that he ended up being the one that did her in. So yeah, he's this whole point of this character's story is to find his wife. So this is as good as that's going to get, unfortunately for him. So they're fighting, they're doing their thing, they eventually take each other out, but that's only one of the three major conclusions here. So yeah, they're going on further. You've got prim and proper villain. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's actually a key thing to note. I think what's key to note about Josh Van's death is that in a way, because he is on top as this is happening. He is getting stabbed in the stomach, and and in his mind, he's got the ring. He knows exactly what happened, so he stabs himself. Like he does it more, he does himself in, he does the honorable thing, like I'm gonna put myself out of this, I'm gonna go be with my wife, kid or whatever. But then he ends up biting the neck of our bow and arrow guy, which is, he bites the jugular, so you would assume he's gonna die as well there, even though with all the other things that we've seen in this movie people come from, the bite to the neck would not be the one that would do it, in my opinion. but you would assume that they died there together. And then you go to the upper deck where you have the big tank guy, and you have our prim and proper, and our mute character. They're fighting. The mute character actually gets thrown to the side and hits his head, which is a big. It's not a big thing. It was a thing that was left uncovered. Earlier in the movie, the daughter said, oh, something about your head injury. She said something about
True.
your old head injury. And so when he hits his head, you get like a noise that would make you think like, oh, this is like, that's the head injury. He knocked his head out, whatever you want to say. But he hits his head and he looks over at Josh Van, who's dying, and he like stops everything that he's doing. He's done fighting the two guys right here, the tank
They
guy and the
they
prim
they
and
end up going
proper.
at each other for a while, so he
Yes.
can go and have his moment with the secondary protagonist.
Yeah, so he goes down there and he talks to him, and he's like, "I found her, man. I did it." And then he dies, and he puts the ring in his hand, and he closes his fist. And then you should go back up to the upper deck where you have our tank character and our prim and proper. They fight for, yes, a very extended period. This is a lot of the fight scenes. I didn't mind it actually up until the end. I really think like the ending sequence was really drawn out, and
That was
it
kind of what I
was
was getting at.
it was a lot at the end. I didn't mind it. I thought the movie was awesome. Don't get me wrong, but if I had to nitpick, some of the other action scenes ended and or had a stopping point that made me have a little break, and then we could get back. With the truck scene, it's like, okay, they had to run, they had to fight, they stopped, he chases again, they fight. Like this was just like balls to the wall. Like we didn't have a break because it's like, okay, they're fighting, okay, over to them fighting, but now we got to go to them fighting, and then
Right.
he's dead, but we got to get to them fighting. So um there was actually one funny point that I wanted to talk about the bow and arrow guy. This has nothing to do really with anything before he dies. When the cop grabbed his leg,
Oh gosh, yeah.
so he was walking menacingly. He's gonna pull his bow and arrow. A cop who is still alive after being pierced with 50 arrows or whatever grabs his leg, right? And so he shoots him with another arrow and he tries to walk away, but the dude's hand won't let his leg go. So he takes the knife and he sits there and cuts it for like 30 seconds. Like it's pretty funny how long it takes, because like in any other movie it's like, all right, he just chops it off and goes, but it's like, no, it's kind of funny that he has to just sit there and just do it for a
Yeah,
little bit.
and then it finally does, take the arm off, and the hand is still gripping his leg, and just
Yes.
as he's walking away, he's got this hand just on his leg, which was pretty comical.
But yeah, so anyway, so yes, the fight scene was super drawn out between the big tank cowboy hat son and the prim and proper. And this is where you get the bar. I actually think we got it earlier, but I'll give it to you anyways. He's like, you really think that dude's your dad, right? And I think that, and when you go back to the kid with the bum leg that she was also helping, he had said, like, they killed my family, and I don't know if he actually, if I don't think he believed that the Afro man was his dad, and I don't think he was either. I think that's part of the story, is like, you're just kid trafficking. You're going to be in a different family in this story, is what it looks like. So when he was making that joke, like, you really think he was your dad, I think he was one of the kids that believed it, kind of deal.
It's
Like,
an
that's the way
interesting
that
way
I
to
was saying it.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. I didn't really draw that parallel, but it certainly could track. I mean, like that very well could be the case there, because yeah, it's kind of an odd idea that the father of that kid would be having him be one of the
Right.
victims. Basically, he's in the holding cell with all the rest of them. So yeah, that does make sense.
And he would always call the other ones idiots. It's like, you guys are so dumb. Like, you think you guys don't know what's going on. So I don't know. I believe that portion of it. So anyway, yes, he tells the tank guy, like, you really believe that the cowboy hat was your dad. Like, you are one stupid motherfucker. And anyway, so they fight, and then we get a finale where he stabs. This is actually the craziest stab that I've ever seen, because he sweeps the knife with both of his feet, does a handstand, and then stabs him in the neck with the knife with his feet. I know if it sounds crazy, it was when you see it. But yes, so that's how the big guy who got smashed in the head with the sledgehammer dies. I don't know. I can't confirm. Sequel maybe, but he gets stabbed in the neck. It goes further, and then he kills him. So now we have the prim and proper, and we have our main mute protagonist
Yeah,
left.
we've shaved down all of the rest. We've basically whittled our way down from all of this fighting to now our mute Chinese guy and our prim and proper guy, the last men standing over here, basically. So we're gonna eventually now have the final showdown between these two.
Yes, and so if you recall, we have our prim and proper. He's up on the upper level, and then down with Josh Van looking at the his remains or whatever. We have our mute character. Then we have the kids who are still in the police station. We didn't make point earlier, but the main girl character got an arrow in her leg for trying to run
True.
earlier, and so she still has the arrow in her leg at this point, and she's hobbling around this police station with the kid who also is hobbling around, and so the prim and proper sees them, and he doesn't care about the mute guy anymore. He's going to go after the kids. I'm evil. Why would I not? So he goes, walks towards them, doesn't run. This is another evil thing. I don't know if you guys knew what evil people do. They walk, they don't run. He walks menacingly over to the kids. Our mute character then tackles him out of a window. I believe that's how that one goes.
Yeah, they both go out. They go out the window down and they land on the bikes. This is when the bike
Yes.
fighting ends up happening.
This was certainly not my favorite portion.
Well, this is
Um,
what I was kind of where I was saying, like, if they had just cut down this last portion just a little bit, it really could have been, like, kind of perfect. And the thing was too, I mean, and we'll get back to the story in just a second, but the thing was too is that, like, it didn't need, like, it wasn't trying to fill any kind of runtime. It was a long enough movie if you had this extra, because, like, again, logical conclusion would have just been the kids get rescued, everything's over. But if you want to have this extra portion, not a problem. I mean, especially with the killing of the wife, that ends up adding this whole extra layer to it. Now we know how psychopathic this prim and proper guy is. All of these things are all fine, but within that context, you don't need all, like, if you'd taken down this portion of the film just by, like, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, it would have been, like, streamlined to the point of being still very satisfying and accomplishing everything that you wanted it to do.
No, absolutely. So yeah, so my one of my least favorite portions was, yes, the scene of them falling onto the bikes. It didn't look very good. It that was my that really stuck out to me. Like when I saw them land on the bikes, like obviously CGI, but like it just didn't look great. And then yes, out of all the impactful martial arts things that we had gotten to see up until this movie, we have a very slow and unimpactful like fight with bikes. And like I get it, like you don't want to hear like a but like you literally just heard like ring, ring,
Because
like
I think that the implication, or at least to try to be a little generous in this portion, is just like, these guys are fighting to the death. They'll fight in any which way they can. Doesn't matter, if they fight with scaffolding, they'll fight
mhm.
with, they'll fight with anything, but they're gonna take it to the end. It's like, all right. I mean, we didn't need that to get that impression. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I see what you're saying with that, with the bikes too. It was unnecessary, I guess.
And for what we had already seen, it's like again, this goes back to the cartoony playfulness of like like you had already set me up with a lot of stuff that made me forget about how cartoony it can be cartoony, but you do it well enough. Like this one is like, yeah, they're just swinging by, and not even they're using the bikes like like the game where you stand on the tilt and like you knock each other into the mud. Like that's
Right.
how they were using the bikes, and it just didn't look great. But they eventually throw the bikes down and they start fighting, and they're in the rain, and then our main character's got a peg, not a peg, but like a pedal from the bike, and he's beating the villain with it, and the villain ends up getting the upper hand where the kids have to come in, and because they find a way to get around the building, they push him off of him,
Well,
and
he had the Chinese mute had gotten the win on him. He was just like beating the hell out of him, and the daughter is like, "Come on, let's
oh
no
yeah,
more
yes.
fighting. Let's stop fighting already here." And then finally, because of that, then the other guy, the prim and proper, does end up kind of coming back. One of those like come back from the dead kind of moments there.
And then he's elbowing him in the head,
I said that was that if you ever wanted a clear cut reasoning for why elbows to the back of the head are illegal in mixed martial arts, there's your reason. I
Yep.
mean, you took some solid back of the head elbows. A couple of people would, Hamdi Abdel Wahab would be very proud.
Yeah, and so he definitely fell over, and you're supposed to believe that, like, oh, he's dead. It's all over. Our main character died, and so the main villain gets up, and he's like, I gotta, I gotta, I gotta go see my wife and kids or something, and then he just like walks away and falls over and dies, which I really didn't like this portion of it either because he was, beating the hell out of our main protagonist and the kids shove him off. And then he's like, yeah, I'm going to die now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that aspect of it was a little. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the problems with any movie that builds up in this way is how do you do it in a satisfying conclusion? So like I think they were trying to maybe subvert some of the expectations of like what you would normally expect with like an over the top like explosion or something like that. So I mean, it was certainly different in that way, but yeah, it was a little bit strange after everything that they had went through. I guess it was just kind of like he was so exhausted that like it is just like I'm done. It's like the conclusion, but like I could see it being a little less than satisfying.
It just, I don't think it matched up correctly for what the death was supposed to be. Like, it seemed like he lost all of his memories. Like, like he was just like, I don't remember anything anymore. And it's like, oh, that's a weird way to take it. Oh, he's dead. Oh, he that was his reaction to dying. Like
Yeah,
it
he was
was
just like delirious, I guess, toward at the end there. But like again, if he had already won the fight, then it was like why? I don't know.
yeah,
There
yeah.
there are a couple of things about that didn't really again this whole little ending portion of the film has a couple of questions that were like kind of or questionable elements to it. So this is definitely one of them. But for whatever reason, he's the main villain is in that delirious state, and he kind of like looks up to the sky and spits up blood, and he's dead now. And so the daughter thinks that her dad is dead, that our deaf or our excuse me our mute Chinese guy is also dead, and she's crying about it, and it's very emotional. And then you fade to black, and he's just back. It's one of
Yep.
those types of things. I mean, like that another thing that was like I mean, and granted, it's like, 1 month later. So, okay, yeah, he didn't actually die. You kind of expected it in a movie. It is a movie, so maybe that's not to be unexpected. But like, it was just one of those kind of like fake outs where fades to black, and he's just back, and he's completely fine now after a month.
Yep, and after a month, they're finally doing the funeral for our Josh Van character. They're laying to rest him and his wife, of course. They have both of the rings and they're tying them off on a little card or whatever, and then they're dumping the ashes out for our Josh Van character.
They're at like the pier. They're out at the,
Yes,
the water.
and this is where you get an interesting thing because was that the lady cop at the end?
That was what I was getting at earlier, where I was saying, when she gets stabbed with the rod or whatever, I was like, we all thought that she was dead. She did have her arm in a sling.
Yeah, so I don't know. Is that a sling?
I
I don't
got
know.
to assume that it was, but I guess maybe because she was in the police outfit in there and then not in a police outfit, and her hair might have been different at that point. Like it was hard to tell if that was her or not. But we did see the secondary protagonist, Josh Van guy, like they showed him again, like him
In full
take,
clothes,
in full,
just
yeah,
like,
because it's showing. I mean, portraying that like obviously his spirit or something like
yeah, the
that.
last we would have seen of him is that's what he looked like.
Exactly, and yeah, I found her. He's being laid to rest. His soul can carry on in the afterlife, or whatever the implication of that is. But it was weird with the woman being there because like it sort of threw that off a little bit, where it's like she's real, right? I mean, she was
Yeah.
standing next to him, so I got to assume that she is actually there. She has her arm in a sling. I got to assume that that was her, but it was a little hard to tell just off of like they should have given her some kind of like distinguishing features. Like she should have had like a mole or something, or like wore her hair in a very distinct way or something.
I definitely agree with you. Yeah, at the end I was pretty confused because I mean she looked like she got dead to me when we were in the police station. I mean, she got stabbed and then she got like roundhouse kicked, but she went flying across the room. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, so she shows up at the pier, and that's where I was also confused because we did get that one shot of our secondary guy walking away. He like walked away, off into the sunset, whatever you want to say. So I was like, is she good? Like, I mean, maybe does our ghost have a sling? Like, what is the problem? But I
Yeah,
don't know.
because she's also in all white too, so it's like
Yeah,
it does kind of have that ethereal sort of feel to it. So yeah, again, I mean, like I think that if you just say that that's what it is in your mind, be like, okay, it was the police lady. She's there. She somehow survived too. If this guy survived, I mean, if our Chinese mute survived all of what he went through, it's not unreasonable in this world to say that she would also have survived. So just go with that as well. The fact that he's alive and she's alive, whatever, just go with all of that. The soul is laid to rest of his friend, the secondary protagonist, Josh Fan guy. He's off, into the sunset, and that's basically the I mean, satisfying. It's that is the conclusion of everything. It's bittersweet, I guess, is what you could call it.
yeah. I mean that certainly is That certainly is a word for it. This movie was
And then, well,
listen.
and then finally, him and the daughter sit down there, and she's like, "Can you tell me your actual story now?" And he goes, and he's going to start telling her the story of how he met her mother, and then that's where we actually end the film. Which I thought that was a fine way to end it, based on their relationship.
I thought he was actually going to talk at the end. I thought that's what they were going to do. Can you tell me your story finally? Ah, yes.
Yeah,
Like I thought he was about to do that.
that actually wouldn't have been a bad thing to do at that point. That kind of would have been like a kind of a fun way to end it. But he stays mute.
One last thing that we didn't bring up because it's completely irrelevant. The character not having a name is fine, but you do find out. He writes it to Josh Van's character because they show a little scene. Actually, I think they show it at the end there when it's like the funeral scene because he's like they cut to them in the jail cell and he's like, I've been doing this with you for a little bit and I don't even know your name. And so he gets up and he goes sits next to him and he writes his name in water like in the dirt or whatever, and his name is, I think it's a Wang Wei.
Yeah,
So
they called him Mr. Wang at some point, I think at the police station earlier, but it was like, yeah, his name was, again, it's not like something that is brought up throughout the film, so it is like kind of the man with no name sort of
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, no, and so I there was just a lot of interesting stuff going on here, and the ending, man, I feel like there was a lot of places that they could have ended it, and they could have maybe figured something out. When the five of them were fighting, you probably could have killed off the prim and proper guy if he was gonna die just up and falling out after a battle. You could have had our mute guy just down there with Josh Van, and he sees the two dudes fight, and they best each other kind of deal. So I don't know. This movie, there was just too much going on, but there was so much fun. I just really enjoyed a lot of it.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, the criticisms of the pacing at the end are kind of the most major ones that I have, but like it was never to the point where I was like, man, I'm not enjoying this. Like I really like throughout all of it, even when I thought it was dragging a little bit in some of the fight sequences, it doesn't take much with cool fighting to make me happy. So like I was pretty satisfied throughout all of this, even with those criticisms. So that being said, I mean, I guess that we have come to that point, Chase. What would you rate The Furious as a film?
As a film, truly, as a film, as of somebody who, I don't think you need to be a huge martial arts fan and or action film fan. I mean, probably if you're going to go watch this, but this movie, like when it comes to story, when it comes to the production, when it comes to the acting, this movie hits a lot of really good points. I would honestly, and I said earlier about Rotten Tomatoes, not 100% of people are going to like this. It's not even possible. But I'll tell you, this it's about a fucking 8.5 out of 10. This is pretty good. Maybe 8.7. There you go.
Yeah, eight was going to be my number. Just because of that, the little issues with the pacing towards the end was the only real negative to it. Like had it given me the feeling of the first half of the film in the second half of the film, this would be like a 9.5. I mean, because like I was loving this film in the first half of it, but towards the end it started to trail off a little bit. Eight is the number that I think I land on comfortably.
I don't know what would make it a 10 for me, but I can tell you what would make it a 9. So there was two specific parts that I can tell you that they chose to be unique and stylize the movie. So obviously at the end with the five people and they had their eyes locked in, I I kind of liked it. It was something different to the movie. It takes you out of it, but it's like you get locked right back into it. Like there was another portion, and this was right at the beginning, and I wish the director would have taken more opportunities to showcase some of these different ideas that they had, because at the beginning where it's showing you like the corridor where our main character, or not the main character but the woman, is going to be fighting at the beginning, there's a shot where the room just tilts like with the
Oh
camera,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like we could have done that more throughout the film. Every time we went to that location we could have seen it tilt. I thought some of the nightclub scenes, they were really well done. I thought, you were talking about the sticker that says like serve and protect or whatever. There was another one at the end with the prim and proper where he had his like the nightclub symbol or whatever, and he gets like thrown through it, and I was like, it's unique things that like when you watch it a second time, it's like, oh, he gets thrown through his own, like, oh, he got his,
Yeah.
kind of deal.
There were definitely little details in there that were good for the world building and good for like that secondary kind of deeper analysis as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, I agree with that absolutely. Yeah, I was teetering on like it's like you said like 8.5 to 7 or whatever. I was teetering more of like 8 8.3 as like, you know what I mean? Like, cause I don't want to give it like, I feel like an 8 is like too low for it. But like, you know, if we do 8 and 8.5s or whatever, like, I mean, like I would be closer to an 8.5 than you know, anything lower than an 8 for sure. Like I think that there was enough there. I really liked the emotional elements to it. Like I think a story like this, if you have it rooted with some, you know, human connection elements, it really makes it more of a full film. It did that very well. So yeah, I was very satisfied with with this as a film. I enjoyed it very much.
I'm actually, I'll give it a 9. I'll give it a 9. And I'll
Nice.
actually stand on that because what would a 10 film be right now? I don't know. I haven't seen one. I haven't said this is a 10 film. This is as close to a 10 as I would say we have seen for MMA on film. Like this movie, we talked about with KO. I mean, there was a lot of different things going on with there, but I don't think I enjoyed that as much as what I had here. Like, obviously, theater experience is a lot different than what you get on Netflix, but this right here, I think is a 9, and I really enjoy the cartoony aspect. Bro, they had literal ice blocks of humans, and they knocked the head off of one of them.
Yeah, I mean, there it's like things like that that really did stick. I mean, you know, you're making me kind of want to give it more of an 8.5 myself here. You know, I mean, I think that that it's definitely within that range, 8 to 8.5 for me. Again, it's like if they just had trimmed down that last little portion of it, this could have been a 9 for me too. Like I said, if go from that first after I saw the truck sequence at the beginning, I was like, if this movie stays this good, I'm going to. This is like an instant classic. You know what I mean? Like this is like a modern classic for real.
And the last thing, I know I talked about the trailer earlier, and but just going back to that initial scene, if the trailer, like the trailer scene that we got for that first initial run chase kind of deal, that was good enough. But the fact that they made it 7 times better, like they really did cook when it came to this one. I'm really happy that, again, when we went and saw Beast and maybe even Smashing Machine, I feel like we might have even seen the trailer for this way back long ago. But when we saw the trailer, we both said that looks fucking sick, and we also said, "Did you see that octagon? We gotta watch an MMA on film." I'm really glad that we got to break, you know, the confines of what, kind of get the gray area of what a mixed martial arts film is. Because, guys, what is kung fu? Martial arts. What do they do in kung fu? They mix in a lot of fucking shit, man. Like, I mean, I was even thinking to myself here, like, out of all the martial arts, kung fu might have to be the most mixed of them all. I mean, they're doing literally everything.
Well, when
here.
it's this kind of kung fu, when it's
Correct.
film kung fu for sure. Well, that brings me very neatly to the next question. Then, you know, if we're locked in, you're giving it a 9. I'll like I said, I'll stay at like an 8.3. I think that'll
Okay.
that'll be where I land. But so if we're locked in on those, then how do you rate it as a mixed martial arts film? Of course, you know, in this context, you know, maybe a little bit is one of those things that's a little bit of a sliding scale. But as a mixed martial arts film, what do you rate it, Chase?
As a mixed martial arts film, I mean, compared to what we have seen movies about mixed martial artists, like the actual story themselves have something to do with somebody who is an ex martial artist or a current former champion, whatever you want to say. This does not have any of that. That has no accolades that they ever bring up with inside the cage. There's no inside the cage tournament. There's no championship on the line. There's not even a person that holds a goddamn belt in the fucking movie. There is just a literal scene of a cage, and there is Muay Thai that happens in it. That is all that there is when it comes to mixed martial arts. So, as a mixed martial arts film, if you are looking for a film that gives you the perfect encapsulation of what mixed martial arts is at the competitive level, you are not going to get that. If you want an action movie that has martial arts, you would get that here. But as a movie about mixed martial arts, I think compared to what we have before, this does not do anything towards that genre.
Right, of
Unfortunately.
course. Yeah, you know, and again, it's tough. It's a little bit of a stretch for us even to be reviewing
Yeah.
it in that context, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess in that regard, if I had to go into that frame of mind, maybe it would have been nice to see a little bit more of the Muay Thai from the Muay Thai fighters. Maybe it would have been nice to see some actual representation of other martial arts that are not the cartoonish kung fu. It's just within this world a little bit. Like you could have made this more of a mixed martial arts film if you wanted it to be. Obviously, that was not the aim of the producers and the director or whatever. So, you know, it was never going to be that potentially. But like you did have a cage, you did have fighters within that cage. You had Muay Thai representation in that regard. So maybe it would have been nice to see a little bit more of that kind of thing showcased. So from that perspective, I mean, yeah, you got to maybe give it like a 5, but like if you're looking at it as a martial arts film, then knowing that it's cartoony for that style of martial arts, it's very good. So I mean, like
Yeah.
again, it's how you define it. So like, whatever your version of what you were looking for out of the film is what ultimately you will take away when it comes to our analysis in a mixed martial arts context. As an actual MMA film, it's really not that, so it's hard to put it into that box. So I don't know. I guess maybe like a 5 would be generous for as a mixed martial arts film. But if we're talking as a martial arts film, period, I mean, I think that this is some of the best kung fu action movie martial arts that we've seen on screen in quite some time. I mean, I would say that it's got to be in like the 9 range for that. Like if we're looking as just as that version of it.
No, absolutely. Like what I was witnessing here, like I was sitting here thinking, like, Jesus Christ, is this what people thought like when they watched Jackie Chan? Were they like, is this what they were seeing? Like
That's what I'm saying.
I'm totally into this style of it because uh it's fun, guys. I hate to break it to you. Like you may think it's stupid, and it is, but it is fun stupid. There are plenty of bad stupid that make you feel dumb for watching it. This doesn't make you feel dumb for watching it. Actually, there's a lot of things that are very mature things that go on here as well, just being disguised behind a bunch of fucking random techniques in kung fu.
Well, so
So
put a number on it though, Chase. If I'm going to give it a 5 on mixed martial arts terms, what are you doing?
I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 6 because even if you could have a mixed martial arts film that we compared to this one, and it may do better for mixed martial arts competitively, when it comes to like the sport inside the octagon, but it may not be that good of a fucking movie as it is. So I would say this might just be higher on the scale just because the movie is so good itself, and it does have to do with martial arts. It may not be mixing the martial arts that you are traditionally seeing inside the octagon, but they are mixing a lot of you talked about on stream that one time. Isn't there a Peruvian martial arts where you defend a knife? Yeah,
Oh yeah, Peruvian knife
that's what
fighting.
they were doing. That's what they were
A
doing in this.
Filipino, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're sure, right? It's funny that you mentioned that because that was literally what I was going to say. Like, yeah, I mean, you're bringing weapons into the equation, and anything can be a weapon. That's certainly a mixture of things there,
Yeah.
isn't it? So, I mean, yeah, again, it's like these numbers that I feel like my numbers are a lot lower for this film than they should be based on how much I enjoyed this film. But again, your own interpretation as far as like what you want out of an MMA movie, if that's what you're going into it for. But I would say don't go into it thinking that it's going to be an MMA movie and you'll be fine. You
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
So that being said, then the final question, and I think I know the answer to this, but Chase, would you recommend The Furious?
I would recommend The Furious to anybody who is wanting to actually go touch grass because you need to go see this in theaters. This is an experience that I think you should see in theaters. It's a film that I think you should try to represent. As of what I was able to see, not many theaters in my area was showing this. So I wanted to go ahead and support the filmmakers in any way that I could because this movie actually made me want to go see it. Like I said before, name the last time you saw a movie trailer that you wanted to go see. Name the last time you actually went and saw it in theater. And name the last time it was actually good. The trifecta is right here, guys. Go watch this movie in theaters.
I mean, nailed it right there. Yes, I also would recommend The Furious for all of those reasons, 100%. I mean, this was such a satisfying experience overall, and really, again, that the hook of the first half of this film that draws you in. Like it's very rare. It's very rare that you get all of those things, but also like that gives you that feeling of all of those things. Like, I'm sitting there and I could feel myself smiling. I'm like, oh man, this is
Yes.
wow. Like this is really cool. Like I'm really enjoying this right now. I'm just kind of like enthralled in what I'm seeing and stuff. Yeah, it absolutely is that. And it goes back to what I had said earlier during the spoiler free. Show the support for a film like this to show that you want more films like this. Doesn't have to be exactly this type of film, but just that. I think that everybody in the film enjoying public is tired of the slop that we get on a regular basis, the sequels, the prequels, the comic books, all of the standard fare that you are kind of played out on. This is not that. This is something unique. It is fresh, it is cool, it has an emotional anchor that is compelling. It's got everything that you want in a movie. It is ultimately a very satisfying experience. Absolutely see this film.
100%. Yeah. No, no doubt. This was really good to see. I saw it with one other person in my theater. No gasps when we saw the uh third quarter fucking scare or whatever you want to say, but even without that, I thought the film was awesome.
Well, and I'm glad you did mention that because I would have forgot. But that is one thing I will caveat all of it with. Go at least in this context with this film, do be prepared to be challenged in that way because I mean there are some action movies where it might just be a bunch of explosions and some fighting or whatever, but it's not really like it doesn't hit you that way. Like there's not like that visceral feeling that you got from some of the things that happen in this movie. So you do have to be prepared to be a little challenged by the film, but as long as you're going into it in an adult capacity, knowing that that is what's potentially going to be there or could be there, like if you're going in blind, this is not a kid's version of martial arts, I would say, or like a kid's martial arts film. This is an adult film.
Yeah.
But as long as you're, of the mindset to be okay with that, then yeah, I mean, there's really no barrier to wanting to watch this film.
100%. Yeah.
All right. Well, then that is it. Then I mean, dude, thinking about this versus our review of Beast, which was also a day one review. Obviously, we had a lot more to say about this, and I think it shows the level of quality. Just like it compels you to want to talk about it more. That in and of itself is like a bit of an endorsement too, right?
Yeah, I know. No, this was really fun. I'm really happy we got to go ahead and go to the theater and see this. It was almost going to be disappointing if you could see it and I couldn't, So
True. Glad we
here
worked
we
that
are.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Glad that it all worked out the way that it did. So, all right. Well, that is about it then, people. Thank you very much for watching. Go and see the film. Let us know what you thought about the film in the comments down below. We appreciate all of your discourse regarding the movies that we talk about. Let us know what else you would like us to review on MMA on Film. We got more stuff coming out in the future. So, thank you very much for hanging out for this one with us, and we will see you in the next installment.